A very good morning to all of you from Government of Telangana, India. Dear participants of Unblock 4.0 and Hackathon, HackDLT. Respected Jayesh Ranjan Garu, Principal Secretary, Industries and IT, Ms. Lakshmi, Director from C-DAC, Mr. Loudon Owen, CEO of DLT Labs, esteemed panelists, Ajay and Neeraj Srivatsava, co-founders of DLT Labs, and the entire team of DLT Labs and Emerging Technologies. A very warm welcome to each one of you. Most of you may be aware that I head the Emerging Technologies wing in IT&C department. Well, as the name implies, the mandate for us is to work on emerging technologies such as AI, blockchain, robotics, cloud, and a host of other technologies. But all the technologies somehow, of all these, some of blockchain is more closer to our hearts. Maybe because we started off first with blockchain technology way back in 2018. And somewhat feel like blockchain is our first child. So we have a special affinity towards blockchain, a bit partial also, I would say, compared to other technologies. Well, having said that, since then, we have made significant strides in this technology in terms of adoption within the government, implemented several projects, a very prestigious one, like the e-voting application, where we are using blockchain to secure votes. Some more are in pipeline. Another new area that we, apart from, we have a number of use cases that we have already implemented, but some more new areas that we're exploring are, for example, one is use cases for NFTs, can we use NFTs in certain use cases in the government? So, well, today we are really excited to unveil Unblock 4.0 in partnership with DLT Labs. DLT Labs, as all of you know, are pioneers of enterprise blockchain solutions, have the research center here in Hyderabad, and they're doing really some wonderful work in supply chain management, records management, and other areas. The Unblock 4, the largest virtual symposium, we have very exciting sessions lined up with eminent panelists and speakers from the government, academia, from the industry, from the entire community, blockchain community, discussing on the impact and use cases of blockchain in fintech, agriculture, supply chain, and public sector. Very exciting sessions lined up. Dr. B.K. Murthy Garu, who was supposed to speak today on national strategy on blockchain and the blockchain framework that the government of India is coming up with, he's down with viral fever. So Lakshmi, who heads C-DAC Hyderabad, has kindly agreed to talk on his behalf about the national blockchain strategy and the blockchain framework. The symposium is followed by Hackathon, HackDLT, which our Principal Secretary, Jayesh Ranjan Garu, is going to launch soon. This is a great opportunity for the Hackathon participants, to develop solutions for different problem statements as minimum coding knowledge is required to build the applications on this ready-to-use tech-enabled platform. So, wishing you all the best. Thank you.
Very good morning to fellow panelists. Good morning to all the participants. Let me first of all apologize. I'm in a moving vehicle, and obviously my picture quality, my audio quality may not be perfect. I could have avoided this event altogether, but I felt that I should spend some time interacting with all of you. So please do pardon me for appearing in this program in this way. But nevertheless, I'm delighted that I'm being a part of this event. I look forward to this hackathon with lots of excitement. In fact, in 2019, we became one of the first states to focus exclusively on blockchain by creating our blockchain framework. And in that framework also, we took upon ourselves certain very key responsibilities. So for example, creating a talent pool, providing infrastructure, also encouraging research, encouraging innovation, and most importantly, doing all that using a partnership model, in a collaborative model. And I'm very happy that 2.5 years down the line, we have a lot to show. In fact, there are such amazing use cases in Telangana, and my colleague Rama Devi alluded to something which is very, very latest. It happened incidentally yesterday itself, when the first ever large-scale demonstration of remote voting, or e-voting as we call, that was successfully done in one of the towns in one of the municipal towns in Telangana called Rama. We have good use cases in supply chain. There are important applications with the agriculture department that we have found out. Some of our solutions in the Fintech space have received national level recognition, national accolades. We started, I remember, more than 2.5 years ago with a solution, with a blockchain enabled solution to manage the complexities of cheat funds. Many of you would know that cheat funds today are kind of associated with all kinds of scams and all kinds of financial irregularities. And we were able to come up with, again, with the help of a startup, with a very innovative solution, which is called T-Chits. Management of records is again something which lots of people do. In our state also, we have been very successful in showcasing, apart from land records and educational records. We have also created a solution which manages vehicles life cycle. So from the time a vehicle is released from the factory till the time it reaches its end of its life, the entire chain of that vehicle's life is managed again using blockchain. And digital citizen services is an area where we see lots of opportunities, lots of possibilities. The e-voting initiative, which we kind of we have introduced yesterday. We also have to work on refining the blockchain solution and some of the other components of that solution a little bit further, based on the results of yesterday's demonstration. But I have no doubt that many other similar citizen services will become perfected by utilizing blockchain. So this entire approach of Telangana government of having a framework, of collaborating, of the government itself taking responsibility for being first adopters and creating a talent pool to service this industry. These are some of the things which we do under the agency called Blockchain District. And we are very happy and very honored as well that DLT Labs, one of the pioneers in various ways of approaching blockchain, have decided to set its R&D center here in Hyderabad that gives a further fillip to the kind of initiatives that we want to take. And having this hackathon today, of course, preceded by the current symposium, is a very milestone day for all of us. I feel very happy that the hackathon has received a tremendous and overwhelming response. Lots of participants, not just from Hyderabad or Telangana, but from all over the country. I was told that there are some international participants as well. So, and again, as all of you would be knowing, this is going to be spread over 14 days, 2 weeks. So this is something very intensive, and I do hope that some good solutions come out of this hackathon. In Telangana, we have a very startup-friendly policy for encouraging proof of concept and demonstrations, etc. So those who come up with very good solutions, those who, let us say, win this hackathon, etc., we'll be very happy to try their solutions out in the street and help them with other ways of scaling up their solution or refining their solution, etc. So that is also something which you should look up to. When you are coming up with something very innovative, there has to be an end user for that innovation. So, and if it is of relevance to the government, we ourselves will implement it. But if it is something to do with enterprises, we will facilitate you to reach the right enterprises or the right customers and get the solutions up and running. So I once again convey my best wishes to all the participants. Also, before the hackathon begins, there are interesting panel sessions. So look forward to listening to some of the domain experts also. And with this, I take pleasure in announcing the launch of hackathon HackDLT, and wish all the participants best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jayesh Ranjan ji, for addressing the audience and unveiling our hackathon, a 12-day hackathon, which is named HackDLT. We would now like to introduce our chair and CEO of DLT Labs, Mr. Loudon Owen. Over to you, Loudon.
Thank you. First of all, Secretary, thank you so much for attending. It's a tremendous honor for us to have you here. And I think together with all of DLT, we're flattered by the extraordinary commitment that Telangana has shown to blockchain and to the future. So I'm going to talk about really three things. So I like keeping it in threes. It's an easier way to keep track of things, which is where are we? Where do we want to get to? And how we're going to get there. And I'm talking specifically about enterprise blockchain and, of course, this hackathon itself. So where are we? Where are we at this? It's helpful at the start of a journey to have some idea where you are and also where you're going to. And this journey is just beginning. We are at the absolute starting line in the launch, the deployment, and the credibility of blockchain. Absolute starting line. You can ignore most of what you read in the public press, frankly. Most of the articles are talking about proof of concepts, but this is the time when blockchain is coming to life and enterprise blockchain is being adopted globally by some of the largest companies in the world. In fact, the largest company in the world, together with DLT, which is Walmart, and many of the most important governments in the world, including Telangana. So we're at the beginning. I believe, and I hope everybody will have some appreciation at the end of the hackathon, that certainly from a DLT perspective, we think we're far ahead because we've been doing this now. There was approximately 5 years of research that went into launching the company, and then a further 4+ years now of operating and being in full production. The second thing that's quite unique today is actually the involvement of the government. This is in effect a public-private partnership in this symposium, and that's unusual. It's very impressive, and it bodes well both for the adoption of blockchain and for the support it's going to have in governments globally, because the need is there without any question. Thirdly, the technology itself is unquestionably breathtaking. And thank you for the flattering introduction. I have been building technology companies now for 25 years, and some of them have become quite substantial. I don't know how many employees have been hired. It's certainly in the tens of thousands in companies that I've either started or been directly involved in building substantially, typically as either chair or CEO. I've never seen anything like this. I've never seen any opportunity that is remotely as attractive and as impressive as what we're talking about here with blockchain. The technology is breathtaking and the opportunity is massive. Now, what about these blocks? What are they? What are all these blocks? The first one, I believe, is frankly, and I'm being very blunt and direct, and I hope everybody appreciates that. I don't find it possible to be otherwise. The first is ignorance. There's a lot of theories and a lot of misunderstanding as to what blockchain can do, and specifically what it can do and what's required for it to operate in an enterprise environment or at a significant governmental level. People confuse constantly public and private blockchains. What's the difference? Why are they different? What's the importance? They confuse decentralization and distribution. And I know I'm talking to a group of enthusiasts who will understand what I'm talking about, but it didn't make us that popular going to this very large conference called Decentralized and telling them it really should be called distributed. But that's the fact. And the other confusion that happens and the other real ignorance is the difference between a proof of concept and actually getting into production. So what I'm hoping comes out of this here is the launch of new opportunities to take your creations and your invention into production at scale. There's no greater feeling than knowing that the technology you've worked so hard over is being used, supported, cared for, and it's helping a large number of people. We've had the pleasure and the honor of doing that at DLT, and we hope many of you will join us in that. The second block, I think, has been a sense of, let's go for a quick fix. Let's make a lot of money quickly with some tokens and issue the tokens, buy a Lamborghini. We're not interested in that here. We're interested in something that is sustainable and that actually achieves great significance in the enterprise environment. Third is confusion. Where do you start? Well, actually, you start by starting. So leave aside all of the academics, leave aside, nothing wrong with it, but leave aside a lot of the theories and jump in and start developing and start experiencing and start using and now start taking into production. And as the founder of Apple said, real artists ship. And it's an interesting phrase, but the real art isn't around making everything beautiful. It's around making it work and making it happen. That's our belief. Where are we going? It's global. And by global, I mean it's everywhere. Every organization, every government in the world, within 10 years, will be using this technology. Every organization and every government within 20 years will be using primarily this technology as its substrata, as its foundation. They have to. It works, it adds enormous value, and it is dramatically transforming the way our world functions. That's where we're going to. The transformation also includes you. We believe that for each of you participating, this should be transformational. Hopefully it will light a fire, get you excited, and help you appreciate why we're doing what we're doing. And you can tell from the people who are associated, we have an extraordinary passion. We want to ensure you also have that passion because it's the best way to live. When is this going to happen? Well, it's going to happen now. It's going to happen today. And it's going to happen in the next hour, the next day, the next week. There have been plenty of examples discussed already with the secretary, the principal secretary. But I can tell you from a DLT perspective, we're working with the biggest mining companies in the world, some of the largest glass manufacturers in terms of telecommunication. And I do have a background in mining. We're working with the Fortune #1 and its partners. And soon that will be several thousand partners. We're working with another organization in the US where it's going to be approximately 20,000 companies in the ecosystem. So it's happening now. Jump on board and be part of it. How are we going to get there? Well, we're going to get there by doing, and I don't know who came up with the word unblock because it's absolutely great. It was probably Ajay, but we're going to unblock. We're going to move the ignorance and the uncertainty and where do you start out of the way and just get going. And we're going to infuse that passion, as I discussed, and make sure everybody understands why we're doing this, because you're fundamentally changing the world. When you're looking at where we're going and how we're going to get there, it's going to be up to you, because this is a very unique opportunity, not simply to build, create, and generate some value, but it's an opportunity to actually determine the path of an entire industry that is already ubiquitous, but it's going to permeate every facet of our society very quickly. And the last way is by being fearless. We're going to work together. We're going to do this aggressively, but we're going to be fearless. So those are my very small number of points I wanted to make. Welcome. Thank you very much. And really excited about this and very excited to get to know all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. And first of all, I would like to thank Telangana government for giving this opportunity. Dr. B.K. Murthy, Senior Director from IT, could not join due to some health issues. So Rama Madam asked me to represent. So like C-DAC being a scientific society under Ministry of Electronics and IT, our parent organization, I would like to throw some light about the various initiatives of MIT in the domain of blockchain technology. So the Ministry of Electronics IT gives a lot of importance to all these emerging technologies, and they try to initiate various R&D activities through which we try to adopt these things with the various use cases. And then from these learnings, we'll try to look at expanding this for the real-time use case scenarios and other things. So with this objective, just like any other technology like AI and other things, so blockchain is also given importance, and almost some 4 years back, the MIT has initiated various R&D activities so that we can try to exploit its potential in the various domains like governance, e-governance, finance domain, and other areas. So one such initiative, the government asked for exploring this in the domain of land records. This is something which is started almost in the year 2017. At that point of time, Telangana government also extended support in enabling a platform where we can try experimenting this particular thing. So that is how the MIT, C-DAC, Telangana government, and various departments like Stamps and Revenue Department of Telangana government, IT, Electronics and Communication, all these departments came forward and then worked together to evolve a solution for the land records. So at that time, the idea to this is something like where we are very clear about having the various challenges like double registrations, the fake sale deed documents, and sometimes we have the internal threats from the known people and other things like that. So who are the intermediaries who are assigned that responsibilities, trusted people. So and also we are aware that this problem is not only in a specific state or something like that in a country, but is across the globe. So this particular thing, and also we are very clear that land records is something where actually the transactions are limited. So it is a less number of transactions, but a high valued asset. So definitely this is something we started, and with a good support from Telangana government, from the domain and IT, Jayesh, Ranjan sir team and all. So we could take it forward and we could successfully deploy in the field, and it's a good learning actually if you look at it, and it's the good success story. So if you look at it, one very important thing is over the period when you talk about the trust. See, though we are able to create reliable networks, and then we are trying to enable security on top of it through HTTPS and other things. One important thing is when it comes to trust, we moved from nomadic life, we moved from gesture based. Then we felt that that is not scalable. Then immediately we moved to some kind of institutional mechanism of enabling trust, like so we have the banks through which we will be authenticated, and they are the people who are the authorized people to carry out that. Schools and like that institutions are built trusted, but still we are facing a lot of challenges. And then that is how the blockchain, which enables the programmable trust through technologies by creating a layer on top of the network through which we are trying to enable the trust, is something which is very, very interesting. And it can definitely help in all our networks and the various online services which we are trying to give, and gives actually the service delivery to the citizens. Just definitely they'll have trust on the government and various things. Okay, so with this actually we have taken up, and in this actually while building the solution, our objective was how we can quickly try to adopt that the technology. So that's how what we could do is that quickly we could integrate in the existing application whatever is already existing deployed, and then where we could see that all the transactions related to the change of ownership in the property registration, we could try to store them in the blockchain in a time sequenced manner, and then so that helps us automatically to generate the encumbrance kind of thing. So the citizen interface and all have not changed, they are as it is, but at the back end, instead of retrieving from the database, we have incorporated the blockchain, so that all these which are stored in a time sequence manner, we are trying to retrieve them from the blockchain and present this. So it's automatically the encumbrance and other things are happening. So all these things are there. When that's how it's a good success story, and later it received Scotch Award, and also in governance category, and also in Gartner AI Award. Actually, it is one of the 4 use cases in the Asia Pacific region which has gone to the final, and it is the only one from India. And later, even ISO standards also, it is identified as one of the use case, and I think shortly it is going to be published in this year. It is almost the final stage, and it will be published. So with all these learnings, actually, where actually all of us work together and we could achieve this, definitely collaboration plays an important role in this. And what we learned over the period is that, see, people realize the importance of the technology, assess the value addition. Definitely it will enable trust, and accountability aspects and all can be enabled through this, but it will not solve each and every problem, but each problem has to be addressed separately. Definitely it will give value addition in this particular section, like enabling trust and verifiability aspects, tamper evidence and other things. And in the present, if you look at it nationally and globally also, like people tried various use cases, whether it is land records or education certificates or farmer insurance or the cheat funds, like that. If you look at it, plenty of applications, there are success stories in each of these things. And now we know that it's potential, and we have already seen the success in the pilots and POCs. But if you want to really take it in a larger way, what is important is actually like need to think about onboarding all other different applications, other applications we should be able to onboard. And and these applications cannot be in silos. So there should be some kind of interaction. The data moves across these things when you talk about the digital world. So we should think about enabling a shared blockchain infrastructure so that you can onboard different applications. Another challenge which we keep looking at, almost everyone is currently facing, is even the manpower, skilled manpower requirements and all. So having in-depth capabilities to build applications is another big challenge. So, and also we have the various existing applications like DigiLocker, eSign, ePraman, so many things are there. So maybe we need to think about integrating with all those where applications might be utilizing and all. So considering all these things and also the various research challenges in terms of performance, scalability, security, privacy, and interoperability sometimes required across the chains at the application level or at the lower level. And also whether we have trust on the smart contracts, code and other things. So whether we have the capabilities towards doing the penetration testing and vulnerability analysis. And also some kind of challenges with respect to semantics of the smart contracts and all. So looking at all these things, what the government has decided is to come out with a national unified blockchain framework. So where we should be able to support the different platforms and the applications of national importance need to be onboarded on top of it. So the unified blockchain framework is something like it should be geographically distributed across the India, and then it will be enabled on top of it, and it should have the proper the layers with respect to various things like interoperability, security, privacy, scalability, performance aspects, and across the stack, technology stack, we should be able to carry out the security audit and other things. And at the same time, it should have some kind of design patterns which help us to build applications on top of it, either smart contracts or for network building and other things, and enabled with appropriate open APIs and REST APIs through which you can try to build applications related to the different domains. So, and here some things which are very clear, it's not that always we need to build from the scratch every application. We should be able to some kind of integrate with existing things, or some in a specific case, you may be having a different design architectural approach and all. All those aspects we should be able to analyze with the domain experts and then use the APIs and then build applications. Okay, so this is the focus. So that create an innovative ecosystem, collaboration across public private partnerships and across the various R&D organizations, industry and premier government and other people based on the capabilities all need to contribute to this. This is the goal of the government through this particular thing. And also, like, see, there are a lot of various research challenges which we need to evolve over the period. We should keep addressing. So that kind of innovative teams are also built. That's the goal of this particular thing. So this is something which Government of India is looking at, and then looking for some kind of applications to be enabled on top of this particular platform, and then learn through this kind of thing. So this is in brief about Unified Blockchain Framework Initiative, and government is also looking for some kind of strategy in terms of enabling this kind of thing for the various state governments and other people. Okay, so the ultimate goal is giving a trusted citizen service delivery. So that's a focus of the initiative for the various departments and the state governments and the other agencies. So this is in brief about the Unified Blockchain Initiative MIT convention of IT. Is that okay? This is from my end. I think the 10 minutes time it's done from my end. Is it okay, Deepa?
Yes, ma'am. Please continue. That's fine.
Yeah. So this is all about, I think it's overall, it's a good learning. And also, I think maybe Jayesh, Ranjan sir and Rama madam would have shared about another case study which we have taken about e-voting. So definitely, see, any solution, if we look at it, one technology alone will not be able to address all the things. So we have to look at what exactly is the value addition given by the technology and what problem it is trying to address. But overall, we need to look at so many other things which can be enabled with a lot of very established technologies and emerging technologies, and then end-to-end we need to take care of. One such thing is e-voting, which we could successfully complete the dry run also. I think there are many things, plenty of things where the central government and state governments can work together in order to enable the various citizen services. So I thank MIT because that's our parent organizations. They are the people who support in the various initiatives of C-DAC. At the same time, unless we get the ground, we cannot do anything. That's how the state government is also supporting a lot funding, and sometimes like giving the infrastructure and then the teams interactions and the platform. That's also a great learning. That's it from my end, Deepa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for joining in and sharing your insights today with us on blockchain and how we are moving ahead, keeping in the government sectors in mind. So we would like to now move ahead with our next speaker. I would like to introduce you Mr. Neeraj Srivatsava. He's the founder and the CTO of DLT Labs. Being a technology pioneer, an engineer, and an entrepreneur, but most importantly, he's an industrious personality who, from a very young age, has an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Neeraj holds a degree in electronic and communication engineering from AKG Engineering College, and he's a proud member of IBM's Global Blockchain Board of Advisors, Forbes Technology Council, and he's a contributing member to global societies such as Hyperledger, Ethereum, and Beta for enterprise-grade blockchain deployments. Please help me welcome Neeraj Srivatsava. Neeraj, thank you so much for joining in today. Over to you.
Thank you. So it's now actually 10 years since I and my partner Ajay and Umesh started working in the space of blockchain, which basically we prefer to call distributed ledger technology. Since then, we have seen the space evolving very rapidly. But at the same time, the core of the technology, what we have seen has remained the same. We see all around companies coming up, solving various business problems on blockchain. But one thing which we have not seen are companies building the ecosystem around a blockchain for core development. As ma'am was saying just before also, that we need the infrastructure, we need the core to be developed before we start developing a high-level solution on top of the blockchain system. Also, we have not seen any configurable platform created on top of blockchain, or we have not seen many of those platforms created on top of a blockchain to solve business problem. Most of the time these days, what we are seeing are old concepts are being repackaged and sold again. For example, suddenly NFT has become a huge deal, but in reality, NFT is same as colored coin, which was proposed years ago. With NFT, people have just packaged it into a new marketing box and has sold it again. But what I feel is this is not a long-term game, as is very evident that various idea like NFT does come up fast, but it also goes away very fast. All these years, I can say I have not seen many companies working strategically on building platform to boost the adoption in the blockchain enterprise space. As soon as people hear blockchain, they think it will disrupt everything, every business, every government, and they become scared of blockchain as a technology. But that's not at all true. Blockchain should not be considered as a disruptor, but as an enabler. There are a number of actually business problems all around which just cannot be solved without blockchain. But I don't see many startups or companies or even like big firms trying to find those specific problems and then solve it using blockchain. What we see today is either companies are stealing ideas from trade and finance world and use those concepts in crypto, or companies who are trying to copy existing platform and launch a new blockchain to do an ICO to make some quick cash. Companies who are borrowing ideas from trade and finance world are doing no good, as it is not at all innovation. This is just a copy and paste. Similarly, I feel there are enough blockchain platform available and we should just stop building any new blockchain platform. Where we need to concentrate is building and developing ecosystem around a blockchain, and that is what is the need of the hour. Think of it this way. Suppose you want to build a web page. You will not start writing code in HTML, right? You will use some tool like WordPress, where you will just simply drag and drop and you will build beautiful web pages. Similarly, it's high time in blockchain space where we don't have to start from scratch every time. We need advanced tool like DLSS track, which will empower you to design and code anything. A no code or a low code platform is actually the future of programming, and any company who will continue to grow strategically in that space in blockchain world will be the real winner actually. Another issue what I see is in the space of blockchain is it lacks tools to deploy, manage and monitor blockchain network. There are few of them definitely available, but almost all of them are very restrictive in terms of features and capability. I also think most of them, if not all, are always hard linked with some sort of cloud service provider, which completely defeats the purpose of using blockchain system. What we need is, again, some advanced tool which allow us to manage blockchain network like a pro. Also, if any of these tools are cloud specific, then I actually don't even consider them a real blockchain tool. A tool to manage blockchain network must always give you a capability, or at least promise to give you a capability to manage blockchain network on multiple cloud system. If not, then it's of no use. Basically, you are not using the distributed nature of blockchain, which is the most important thing. Overall, I don't really feel very excited where this space of blockchain is actually going, because everyone is, or I'll say most of the people in the space is trying to cash on short-term success. There are very, very few companies like us where we are moving strategically step by step to grow the blockchain ecosystem, as well as increase the adoption of blockchain in the enterprise space. Some people think that blockchain is not ready from prime time, but trust me, guys, blockchain is 100% ready for the prime time. And this is where, as Loudon mentioned before also, we have been running one of the biggest blockchain network for Walmart for last more than 1.5 years and have moved more than $500 million of assets for them. Basically, sometimes it even feels empty, as there's really not enough competition in the space of enterprise blockchain, because no one has out of the box solution which they can offer to the enterprise world, because enterprise world don't want to play with guesses that, hey, this may develop or this POC may success. What they want to hear is, this is how the success looks like. Basically, from company's perspective, it's great to be the leader in the space, but not having a real competition for a company like ours is not a good thing for the blockchain overall. At the same time, this is the reason why I say future of blockchain is in our hand, and we are making sure that the future of blockchain remain exciting and secured, whereby building tools like DL Unify, on top of which we will be running this entire hackathon. Basically, one of the biggest hackathon in the world will be run on our platform. And this is the type of the platform what the world need if we have to grow the basic ecosystem of the blockchain. Also, last few years, we have seen a lot of progress in the field of interoperability. I think the ma'am just before said that, yes, we need interoperability in the space of blockchain. One project which has been very close to me, and I've always also actually promoted it a few years ago when it was really new and no one knew about it, was Polkadot. Today, Polkadot is one of the biggest promise in the space of blockchain to enable interoperability among various blockchain platforms. Technology like Polkadot will convert blockchain into a parallel internet, where we will not need internet protocol to run blockchain like what we needed today. I think very soon we will reach to a point where data and network will become one for everyone. Basically, what I mean is, today, when you use internet, it does not guarantee access to data. Again, what I mean is, if you are connected to an internet, that does not mean you will have access to website, because data and network are at two different layers. But on blockchain network, data and network are at the same layer, and it's a big deal. If you have access to network, that means you will have access to the data. The day we can achieve this on a regular network, the issue of data address, privacy, what we have today will actually go away. We can basically live in a much simpler world, which will enable a whole new economy, which will be much bigger than what it is today, and a new world with the brand new opportunities, which the world has never seen. But to achieve it, we will have to see a much bigger picture. We will have to be very strategic and achieve one success at a time. And this is what exactly we are doing here at DLT Labs. On that note, again, thank you so much. Thanks for listening to me, and best of luck.
Thanks for a wonderful introduction about each and everyone. And it's really a pleasure to have such a august, panelist today with us today. And good afternoon, good evening, good morning to whichever part of the world you are and attending to this webinar. Blockchain is no more a buzzword. And, since morning, we had a very interesting discussions which have been emerging out of it. And as such, all across the world, if you look at it,
blockchain is a reality now. Lots of industries, lots of government, they're adopting this technology. This year, of course, has been a kind of, we are seeing a seesaw kind of movement in the blockchain, so much of traction everywhere we are seeing, whether it was NFT, whether it was a blockchain in the government or the Fintech, CBDC. So what is it that makes blockchain such important to be adopted? That's the real question which always arises. And how is this technology really disrupting each sector, in times to come? Those are the kind of questions which always arise. Why it's so important to get accustomed to the blockchain in due course of time? Where is the path? And the crucial things in the blockchain are the two important sectors, right? And one is the fintech, and of course, second is the supply chain. So those are huge sectors in itself, right? When we talk of the blockchain. And as one of the studies says, we're going to have almost cross-border settlements, which are going to be in billions and billions of dollars by the end of 2030, right? So that's the kind of thing which we are seeing, and financial institutions are going to adapt the blockchain, right? We're going to have the fintech industry, which has already disrupted the complete financial institutions as a whole. And when it comes to the supply chain, we are seeing similar kind of traction, which is there. The challenges which we face in supply chain are phenomenal, and it's been complex over a period of time. And the blockchain is the one which is really giving us the right path in case of the transparency, your contractual agreements, your kind of, the movement of the product, and all happening on the blockchain from the developer or the manufacturer to the user, right? And the products which were always hard to track, right? They have been eased by the use of the blockchain, the IoT. So when I talk of the blockchain, so it can encompass all the disruptive technologies, including AI, ML, IoT, all those things. So this is what we are going to be discussing in this particular session. I don't want to stand between the thought process which my panelists have got today and what I'm talking. So over to each one of you, and we would like to listen from you, how you look at the blockchain in these two areas. So I will start with you, Rama ma'am, to give a perspective on this, please.
Thank you, Inderjeet. Well, a lot of people think, well, when it comes to blockchain or any emerging technology for that matter, what would a government be doing? Because traditionally, if you look at government, after 10 years, some private enterprise or, private sector would actually implement some technology, then government would start looking at it. But now it's not the case. In fact, as most of you know that we have a separate division or a vertical called emerging technologies, which we have set up 3 years back to specifically focus on all the technologies that you just now mentioned. Of course, blockchain is one of the main technology that we have been focusing on since 2018, I think, when we had the first International Blockchain Congress in Hyderabad. That kind of set the momentum for us to work in blockchain. Well, again, why government, how government, what for is it for the government, in blockchain technology? Coming to that, blockchain, as all of you are, experts in blockchain, so I don't need to tell why blockchain or the characteristics of blockchain that really help us in addressing certain challenges like, immutability, or bringing in that single point of trust or source of information, immutability of records, bringing in transparency and trust in the whole, processes the government actually implements. So to just give you a few cases, of course, supply chain, fintech, and record keeping. These three are very important for the government, where we believe that blockchain brings a lot of advantages. So, well, since record keeping is not part of this, I'm just skipping that. But land records is one of the greatest example in blockchain, where governments across the world are keen to implement blockchain in that particular thing. Then coming to, yes, supply chain and blockchain, if you look at government, government implements large number of schemes, it could be public distribution system. Each scheme is huge in scale and size, So in Telangana, we have this public distribution system. Of course, it's not specific to Telangana, it's implemented across the country. And again, public distribution system wherein, people who have those ration cards, I think it's white, pink. I always get confused with those colors, but certain ration card, they get discounted, rice, pulses at a discounted price. And again, it's delivered across India for people who are below poverty line. And the numbers are mind-boggling. If you look at it, just for PDS rice and pulses, it's 28.3 million beneficiaries across 10,000 villages spread across in India. And the budget, this is an old figure, I'm not sure of the right, 2,500 crores or it's around 325 million per annum. This is what we are looking at. In Telangana, we are actually implementing blockchain to track the distribution of these food grains, from the point where we procure to the last mile where these are delivered to the poor people, because usually what happens is the kind of variety that the government buys at the procurement center significantly or drastically changes by the time it reaches the last mile. So that's one use case that we are working on. The second one, again, as I said, these are schemes to benefit poor people, women and child welfare department, where again, they actually supply, rice, oil, red gram, milk for actually pregnant women and, infants actually. And again, the numbers are huge. Number of Anganwadi centers where these are distributed is around, the number is around 35,700 within Telangana, spread across 33 districts. And number of beneficiaries, you're looking at 25,000 annually. The biggest problem is while milk, the certain perishable and non-perishable items that are distributed to this, we're not sure whether these, the end beneficiary is actually receiving these benefits or not. So this is another area that we're working with a company called Startwig, which is a startup based out of Hyderabad, in these two particular use cases. Then a third interesting use case that we are working on is in agriculture, seed traceability, supply chain again. And in Telangana, I'm not sure about the rest of the states in India, a lot of times when that sowing season starts, while the government actually procures these seeds at subsidized rates, very quality seeds, but somehow these fake seeds get into the supply chain. And in fact, there are cases where farmers, sow those fake seeds, and because of the poor quality of the crop, there are instances where farmers commit suicide. It's a very serious issue in Telangana. So in fact, this is another area, and we recently released an RFP, to source solutions from startups to implement blockchain for seed traceability. Well, this can be extended to organic products and so on, which are expensive. That's the third area. Well, another one that we are working on is in vehicle life cycle management. From the point it's actually manufactured to the, again, till the disposed of. These are the various use cases in supply chain that we are working on. Coming to the fintech, while there are not many use cases in fintech, but I would like to share two very interesting use cases. One is, it's called Srinidhi project, wherein again we offer loans to poor women, at a very low interest rate. These poor women, what they do, they take these loans, put it in their business, and once they earn, they actually pay back the government with a nominal interest rate. So again, we are using blockchain while to track, there's certain anomalies in payments, disbursements, and so on, to bring in that transparency in the whole supply chain thing, in the whole payment system. But a very important feature that we have included in this is we are actually calculating what you call a credit score for each of these, women who are paying back to the government. It's not to penalize women who are not paying because they're very poor women. You cannot even, penalize them, but to actually incentivize good financial behavior. So once we all have civil scores, but they cannot have such kind of scores, and they don't even have collaterals, to submit to get other financial instruments. This the government is doing so that if we give a good credit score, the other institutions like could be banks or any of the lending institutions can actually use this score to further, help these poor women. That's one which we have piloted in 2 districts in Telangana, impacting around 10,000 women. These are called self-help groups. They're again present everywhere across India. And whatever we are doing in Telangana, it can be replicated across India. Those are the kind of projects or schemes that are executed elsewhere in the country. The second one is, I think most of you might be familiar because it has been all over the place. It's called, it's in the chit fund space. I don't know how many of you are aware of this particular financial product where, most of the middle class people, a little below that, and business people also, take loans from these institutions called chit funds. Their auction, you put in money monthly and then you auction and take a lump sum and pay back to it. So a lot of people, there are a lot of unrecognized chit funds operating, and Sharda scam in Kolkata is a famous one, where a lot of people were duped. Many a times, poor people get duped. They put their hard-earned money in these funds, and these chit fund companies they were like fly-by-night operators. So this is one area where we implemented a blockchain solution end to end. It's just not a pilot. It has been implemented across the state, successful, and we did actually one lot. I mean, the important, success metric for this is now people can invest money in a chit fund company that is registered. They can know, oh, this is a chit fund company that is registered out there, and any fraudulent activities can easily be flagged to the regulators. Otherwise, earlier the regulators were not aware what are the activities that are happening in a particular chit fund. Now everything is transparent across, the entire process. So yes, Inderjeet, these are few of the use cases that we are working on.
Wonderful, ma'am. Thank you. Very nice insights which are given from a government perspective, and the way Telangana has been, spearheading lots of blockchain projects. I think it's giving way ahead to other states also to follow the same kind of things, because you've already done a test bed for them and you piloted it, and it's like kind of a rollout to the other states. So the time which you have taken to develop, and make it as a mature technology, it will be for the others to just follow your footsteps. For a wonderful initiative, ma'am. Thanks for your insights into the supply chain, the fintech, and the other government projects. And each one of them, if you look at it, whether it's your land record or your health cards or your PDS system, and bringing the transparency, the documents, each one of them really help each of the citizen in the country or the state per se. So really wonderful initiative. Kudos to you and your team for all this, what you're doing, ma'am. So over to Prasanna. Prasanna, we'd like to, because you're in the fintech space and you are working on lots of fintech technologies altogether, and brought in a lot of insights into the country, lots of technology things into the country, and we'd like to hear from you your journey as a blockchain man in the country, and would like to have your insights.
Yeah, thank you, Inderjeet. I think the way a lot of use cases Telangana government is doing, and just imagine every state who started similar kind of alignment in their respective states and well supported by, say, central government. I think India will be certainly a blockchain country ahead of the other countries. For example, China has come up with a blockchain strategy a couple of years back, or Australia. There are many other countries. Our blockchain strategy is also there. It is a more of a theoretical, but the way Telangana government is really doing groundwork, it is a kind of a template for other states. How do we really drive a blockchain kind of initiatives? Now coming back to our vision, right? How do we really drive blockchain at a country level or the banking level? I think it's a great journey, at least in the last 5 to 6 years. The way I have seen blockchain started with writing a blog on blockchain, and the Bitcoin price was somewhere around 6,000 INR that moment. That has given a traction, but the blockchain is more than that. It's a foundational technology, just like internet is a foundational technology, right? And if we see the adoption of India compared to Asia or the other countries, Asian adoption is around 9% compared to the world adoption, right? So that shows how much the adoption has happened country like India, and what is the biggest opportunity for blockchain technology in India. So I think if I divide answer for your question in many areas, on use case side, I think banks and many other industries have identified those use cases now. Say example, in a bank, I can tell you 30, 40 plus use cases, which are the use cases can really take a banking ecosystem to the next orbit. Right now, the way challenge with the banking ecosystem, it is being drafted, regulated since last so many years, and we have to align with that. Right. Say example, if I want to say, let's bring on a central bank digital currency, it's very much possible technically, but those monetary policies driving it, I think UPI took 3 to 4 years, starting from a specification to an actual deployment way back in 2016, followed by 2016 post demonetization. Right. So it will take some time. And the way the traction is happening on the education side, on the banking, right? So bankers are getting trained at NIBM, where I'm part of those programs, right? So I think RBI also put in their vision statement that they are working on the central bank currency kind of a use case. RBI's second cohort was on cross-border payment, right? That shows the regulators are asking, come on, fintech companies, come to me and show me your power of cross-border payment, so that these companies are ready for banks, right? Ready means they are ready around compliance, they are ready around security kind of typically we have seen fintech comes with a lot of enthusiasm, but they miss out this kind of a regulatory and compliance aspect. But through these codes, they are creating those MVPs which are ready for actual use cases. Then CKYC, or if you see overall banking transaction, which is riding on a lot of reconciliation settlement, where NPCI came in and tried doing some Vajra kind of a use case to reduce the settlement cycle for UPI and IMPS. Similarly, tomorrow, if we decide to create a crypto bank, which doesn't have a settlement, which doesn't have any kind of a reconciliation dispute, and which works just like how Bitcoin works, without man in middle, without much of a hassles of extra overheads of the servers, it is very possible technically. But regulation will take its own time and really bring on this kind of ecosystem over a period of next 5-6 years. That's what I've seen. Now coming back, what is happening on the other ground, second area, which is on education side, right? We have seen many companies like Kerala Blockchain Academy or DLT Labs or Adani or you name, every institute now gearing up to have a educational aspect into their chapter, right? Blockchain, right? So they are creating dedicated COEs for, so I think that will drive a lot of momentum for upcoming developers who are Java developers and come up with a actual skill sets, right? So I think that problem of having blockchain skill set or not having that will be resolved. Where India Blockchain Forum also looking at collaborating with these kind of ecosystems and create a massive program, education program along with some of the state governments. Third area, which are our research area, right? So we depends upon hyperledgers or Ethereums or those R3s, right? So power of research companies in India like Aurigraph or Pebble is like they can create their own ledger technologies, right? Which will be much cheaper compared to the Ethereum gas fee, where we find a lot of challenges, right? While we are implementing NFTs or so on. So I think that gives a traction for a research area. So I think at a central level, the way MeetY is driving only use cases, I think we need an arm which drives research also. I think LDRBT is doing a lot of work around that, right? We have, in a couple of years back, we come up with a blueprint of a banking blockchain, right? So how a blockchain, if I implement, how a blueprint should be there. So that kind of a traction has to go on to the next level. I think having use case mapping with the startups, I think Telangana government has done a lot of work. Similarly, at the central level, DSCI was doing some work, or technology blockchain, which are those startups and which are those use cases, right? Use case repository mapping of that. I think if that is ready, any corporate comes and says, this is an use case, your bandwidth is ready, right? So that kind of a work, we should look at it. So I think these are all some of the areas or collaboration with the Ethereum's Hyperledger to bring on some of our India Blockchain Forum kind of a platform, so that actual amalgamation or actual deployment, whenever it happens, so we get actual support from those direct companies. So today, every company struggle and they have their own individual struggle to those companies. How do we really go to the next level, right? I think if I come back to the use cases, Inderjeet, I think central bank digital currency is a massive use case we will see, India will see. And the way India will build, because we have our own railroads are ready. Railroads in the sense back-end identity system in form of Aadhaar, or back-end payment system in form of a UPI, or there are other ecosystem like account aggregator which is coming up, right? Cross-border payment or trade finance, there is a company which is a consortium of 15 plus banks, right? Which is taking care of a trade finance to begin with, followed by there will be many more other use cases. CKYC or a KYC is one of the biggest problem for all the regulators, including SEBI or IRD or RBI. So the initiative which is taken by MeetY along with IIT Bhilai, where Rajat sir is helping us apart from the IDRBTs. So I think that will drive a lot of traction. Imagine a bank takes 5,000 to 6,000 rupees for a KYC. I don't know whether that KYC is going to be a prime customer or just a account being opened, right? So we can save a lot of INRs for bank or consolidated the way we have done consolidation of payments in form of UPI. We will see consolidation of a KYC on video KYC on blockchain will save a lot of things, right? Now, if we identify like these use cases, there are many more use cases in banking ecosystem where we have an interbanking dependency or we have a dependency on other fintechs. So I think there will be a lot of foundational technologies, foundational architecture will be revamped will happen. Account aggregator, wherein it is a multi-stakeholder ecosystem like FIUs, FIPs between and ultimately customer is a gainer for this, right? So account aggregator coming on blockchain will give a incentive to the customer that his consent will be taken care with the help of blockchain technology, with one additional layer. And just imagine every country will look at this account aggregator as one of those, the way we look at EU, right, for a PSD2 kind of a ecosystem. So that's how is the power of a blockchain coming in. Likewise, there are every sector, healthcare, manufacturing, supply chain, the way we talk about Atmanirbhar on smart supply chains. I think banking, blockchain will come and will act as a foundation technology. So this is what we are looking at today. Now imagine tomorrow when 5G will become reality, when customers will carry at least 1 or 2 gadgets around them, wearables, and those wearables or those cars or those houses will be doing those financial transactions. That moment will be needing those trust, inherent trust, right? The trust which is not there in, say, example, in banking ecosystem, we need to do a lot of reconciliation. So I think blockchain coming into those marketplaces will bring that inherent trust. So that is how we have seen in industry 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, right? The power was not there. The power came in industry 2.0, right? Industry 4.0 means more about automation, right? So, but how that automation will be supported by a trust. So that will be brought by the blockchain. So inherently today, internet has become an integral part of every application, every smartphone or every application. In next 5-6 years or maybe in 2030, we'll not talk about blockchain. Inherently, blockchain will be part of every ecosystem as a database, or RDBS, the way we see today, because that will be the need, right? Inherent trust, and ecosystems will not be a client-server ecosystem at that moment. That will be a marketplace, multi-cloud ecosystem. So I think that's how foundationally blockchain will get penetrate seamlessly. We'll never know, and that moment we'll automatically talk about Paytms or Flipkart the way we talk about use cases on internet, right? We'll talk about many more use cases. NFTs could be the one of them, or CBDCs, or smart houses, or renewable energy to be shared. Or so today there are a lot of challenges. I think Rama were talking about land registration, right? I think if we have a digitized land records, automatically we can really implement blockchain kind of ecosystem. We don't have to put those billboards in front of your houses or lands, right? This belongs to me, right? That will be taken care inherently, that trust. I think, Inderjeet, I think we at the India Blockchain Forum look at how we can amalgam this use case repository, research areas, education, collaboration with the corporates and academia, and create an ecosystem in front of India so that this blockchain journey becomes very seamless. So that's in a nutshell from my side to begin with.
So thanks. I think you brought in very pertinent points regarding the banking, the otherwise the ecosystem, and how the India as a blockchain industry and the startup ecosystem is really picking up. We are seeing lots of traction on that side, and you've been a pillar in bringing up the startup ecosystem as a whole. It's really phenomenal, and thanks for your insights, Prasanna. So over to you, Anu, and you've been into the disruptive technologies and the supply chain, and you've done a lot into that area. So we'd like to hear from your work area and how you have been contributing towards the blockchain itself and your solutions which you have been working on.
Thanks, Inderjeet. So first of all, I think the whole point of why blockchain keeps coming back to us, right? I'm quite passionate. I've been working on this technology for quite a few years now. And the way I look at it is that if you look at historically, some of the technologies which have been around for almost a couple of decades, all these technologies were very centric to enterprises and organizations, right? So we were always looking inside in terms of what our processes were, and our processes ended within the construct of the organization itself. And that has now changed fundamentally. And it's not about technology, right? So even as a thought process, that has changed fundamentally. And by that, what I mean is that we've stopped looking inside out, and we want to also look outside in, by which what I mean is when I look at a process, when I look at whether it's a combination of a supply chain and financing process, any of these processes, you cannot maximize the benefit that you get in that process or the value of that process itself if you just restrict it to the different participants within a single organization. So you have to, or within your individual organization. So you have to open it up now, right? So, and that's where it becomes very critical in terms of how supply chain and fintech are going to be are tightly coupled with each other. And I'm going to take you through some of the examples in terms of the work that we've been doing in this area so far globally. First of all, in terms of statistics, if I could tell you, supply chain finance, we feel especially is something which is quite high in our radar in emerging markets. Almost 40 to 46% of the work that we see happening across organizations is actually happening in emerging market. There's in Thailand, we did the first letter of credit that was issued on a blockchain enabled for a shipment that went from Thailand to Vietnam last year. And all of these things are happening across the globe. But the whole point here is that, first of all, the key thing was supply chain is a very deep tier network. Supply chain is not just your relationship between your next point of contact. It's not just the relationship between you and your supplier, but supply chain has to have a deep tier understanding. And that multi-tier itself, we didn't have any technology that could support that multi-tier in the ecosystem which a supply chain is made out of till now. So the first thing that blockchain enable you to do is have that the visibility of that multi-tier on a single platform, right? Or on a single solution. So that's about connecting the dots. Now, once your dots are connected, a lot of things become very easy. Now, if you look at challenges that Rama Devi spoke about earlier also, that disbursement, so all these funds are there by the government. How do you authenticate whether the funds are going to the right people? How do you know that they're able to leverage some of these benefits that are given to them by the government with minimal impact, right? Because sometimes even the red tape around these solutions become so high, what we have seen, what we've understood. I also work very closely with the Indian government in terms of how these applications can be used. But so if you look at the red tape around some of these systems, the systems have become so complex that for a farmer or for somebody who needs, who runs a small organization and who needs to be able to leverage these solutions, it has become quite complicated. So your technology today doesn't have to have, it is not just about having the right technology, but it is also going to be how easy it is to use that technology. So essentially what we are doing right now is that if I have my multi-tier on a single platform, if I can digitally authenticate everybody who's there, and that could mean somebody who's uneducated and illiterate as well. It does not have to be somebody who has to have that kind of technology. If I can create the technology around the different kind of people who are going to be using that, then essentially what I'm doing is I'm enabling them to not have a loss of business opportunity. By that, what I mean is that if you look at this sector, especially in the supply chain finance sector, unlike the large organizations, the supply chain finance, whether it's your invoice financing credit that you need, it's mostly for a lot of SMEs who are not very technically savvy, who are not very, who might not even have their paperwork in place, who might have a lot of challenges in terms of just following around the different processes there. So the process needs to be easy enough for us to make sure that everybody can get involved. But at the same time, we need to be able to authenticate that whoever is getting grants and access can be very clearly validated in terms of their digital identities, etc. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is if I can put all of these points together, essentially what blockchain enables you to do is create a process which is not just centric to an organization, but across the different partners of the ecosystem. For example, in some countries, we have almost gone up to 5 tiers of supply chain. So that means that the moment, let's say a large OEM gives an order to their supplier, the supplier's next 3 tiers of suppliers itself would have availability of funds, approved funds that they can go and get from the bank, right? And again, what we call it as a zero-day financing. So essentially what now it impacts and how it is important for supply chain, I'll just build that relationship also. So while zero-day financing is more from a finance aspect, the reason it is important for supply chain is because now my planning and my forecasting is going to be more accurate, because now my planning and my forecasting is not just coming from my dependency on my first or second level of supplier, but it's coming from all the way till my 5th or 6th levels of supplier as well, right? And that is important for me to make sure that I have an accurate manufacturing process, I have an accurate delivery process, etc. So that's the whole impact that we are talking about. Then the second side of it, a little bit what we spoke about, is the whole trade finance part of it, right? So that's again an area where your supply chain and your supply chain finance come together very closely. So in trade finance, again, what we've seen, I'm going to talk about, I think in India, we are still at a little nascent phase. we are still at the start of the journey where we are trying to explore how this is going to be used. But being the manufacturing hub that we are coming out to be, it's going to be very important for us, because if that's our ambition as a country, to become a manufacturing unit, a global manufacturing unit, for us, trade finance is going to become critical, because essentially that means that I'm going to be giving orders or getting orders from all across the world. And I need to be able to validate myself that I am a genuine supplier to be able to, again, supply across the globe, right? So that is also something that becomes very important for the Indian subcontinent, for us as collectively, and that's going to be a role that government will play and has already started playing as we speak, right? Where while you use blockchain as a technology, the idea here or the aim there is for us to be there in the international market as validated suppliers, in a validated trade finance network, so that my supply chain can enable me to become that future that we are dreaming right now. So these are some points from me, in that I'm going to stop there. Otherwise, I can just keep talking on this subject.
Thanks for your insights, Anu. And, as an impetus from the Government of India, the Central Board and of Direct Taxes and Customs, they have rolled out a project for the electronic cargo tracking system, just on 15th of October based on the blockchain. And we are seeing a lot of things which are happening toward the supply chain itself, and very interesting space to work on. And I will move on to Vinod, and Vinod, your insights into the kind of projects which you're working on the supply chain and the fintech aspect.
Sure. Thank you. I think at DLT Labs, we are looking at this blockchain from a slightly different perspective. We are looking at opportunities wherever there is a friction or there are disputes. Those are basically the ideal cases for us. And that could be across industry verticals. Wherever we see that there are multiple participants and they are not able to come to terms, or it results into dispute, I think those are the ideal cases. We've seen that in supply chain finance, and across industries. So let me give you some examples. I think one of the key implementation for us is at Walmart Canada, where we have reduced the dispute by over 98%. The current system that they had, where basically it's for the freight audit payment, where there are carriers who essentially bring the stuff to Walmart, but then basically there are disputes, particularly with respect to the variable charges in terms of the distance traveled, time taken, etc. And there were 70% of the invoices which used to go into dispute. What we have done is we have, along with the blockchain, we have taken IoT into the mix. So first of all, we onboarded all the participants onto the platform, be it from Walmart, be it from carrier, all of them are onboarded. So all of them have a single view of the system. And then coupled that with the IoT information, which gives a real-time information of the distance traveled or the time taken. The invoices are auto-generated, and that has brought down the dispute by over 98%. Right. So I think that's a significant use case that we have. Another use case that we have is with respect to mining company. Right. We are working with a miner called as C-DAC in Canada. Essentially, it's for extraction and mining of zinc and lead concentrate, right? So they bring it from the mine, they process it, create germanium concentrate, and that basically then smelt it to create germanium tetroxide and germanium oxide. These are the ones which are used in the manufacturing of fiber optic. And these are basically sold to a company called as Corning, which makes the fiber optic and then sells it to the telecom company. So what we are able to achieve in this whole process is the end-to-end tracking of the mine from which the zinc and lead are coming. Second thing, we are also able to monitor the ESG aspect, how the production is happening, the smelting is happening, the responsible production aspect of it, right? So we are able to track that entire thing. And I think the days are, it's not far away when there will be regulation where all these things will be mandatory. So this gives tech an edge over its competitor in terms of their readiness for the compliance whenever it comes. Another important, I think, the benefit that is achieved by tech is they will be able to get premium pricing because they are able to provide this, the provenance. They are able to provide the proof of certificate that it has come from a specific mine. Coming to, I think, what ma'am said with respect to the land registration and, the associate thing, we are basically working on a couple of things where, which is essentially in the area of, consumer credit. So, right, in outside the world, you essentially get the credit from multiple companies, right? You get it from, there are companies like Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, where you get all this credit. Now, the credit that you get is basically, sometimes is not aligned to the customer. So we are using blockchain to kind of create a single view of consolidated view of the customer credit history. We're also using it for the digitization of the titles. So, with the advancement in the online registration, we've seen during pandemic, there have been significant increase in the online registration. So in states, I think that it has gone up significantly. And we are basically working with these companies to kind of, look at that use case as well. So I think these are some of the use cases, particularly I think if you look at in the trade finance area, I agree with Anu, I think the opportunity is significant. If you look at, I think the global trade, it's roughly about 25, 26 trillion. And if you look at the trade financing aspect of it, it's close to about 8 to 10 trillion. Out of which about 4 odd trillion is in the letter of credit and 4 odd trillion is something what we call as supplier-led finance and buyer-led finance, right? So the opportunity is significant because at this point, as we speak, the gap in the trade finance is close to about 1.5 trillion, expected to rise to about 2.5 trillion as the supply chain moves out of China. So the opportunity is significant, and we have seen the pain points, right, with letter of credit. It is essentially, it's a heavily documented, document-driven process. It's a process where basically there is a delay, there is a cost involved, there are multiple parties, and blockchain is a perfect solution for that kind of thing, right? So while I think, there are consortiums which are made, which are basically providing the trade finance, right, like Marco Polo and WeTrade, etc. There is a significant opportunity on the other part, which is buyer-led finance, supply and the supplier-led finance, like invoice discounting, factoring, reverse factoring. And we have a platform which essentially provides an end-to-end of the supply chain with integrated payment with MasterCard and the supply and the trade finance aspect of it. So I think there are very interesting use cases. Couple of them, in addition to what I just said, with respect to IoT coming in mix, right? I think there have been challenges that the tracking usually used to happen at the level of, let's say, a truck. But now with the advancement in the IoT technology, you are able to track at a packet level. What that means is that the e-commerce and the last mile delivery will be enabled. We are also seeing that the transportation of food items, right, which basically led to spoilage. Now, with the advancement in the IoT technology and real-time tracking of those, basically will increase the IoT with blockchain. I think that is going to be a super combination, right? So there are, I think, good number of cases coming up in terms of the driver behavior and the fleet management, etc. But I think it's a very interesting space, and we are at a very crucial juncture. I think we at DLT essentially have, as you have seen, that we have invested significantly in these technologies. We have built reusable components which can be integrated, which can be basically combined to make any business process or workflows, and then can be seamlessly integrated with the external world using APIs and webhook, etc. Right, and our platform is kind of agnostic to any any particular network.
Right. So wonderful and great job DLT Labs is doing, on the different platforms, bringing them together. And just one question, Prasanna, CBDC is being most talked about, and definitely we'd like to have your insights on the CBDC and how the implementation is going to take place in India, because that's really going to disrupt the Indian ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, I think last year, sometime in the September, October, we have done one session with the NIBM, so where we had invited around 25 plus bank members, including RBI. And that's how the traction which we have seen, that RBI has incorporated a CBDC as one of their agenda in this year. And they recently, I think we have seen the RBI spokesperson also announced that we are working on this, and maybe we'll see some kind of output by end of this year. But coming back, my own study, I think it will take some more time, right? Drafting, I think how it will be, right? So we have to bring on the banks together, banks spokesperson together, create those specifications, do some kind of a POC, identify the player who is going to be the potential partner. So R3 is one of those partners which is done almost all or most of them CBDC implementation across the world. So will not be surprised to see the R3 is doing that kind of a activity for India also. So how do you bring on other infrastructure like UPI or identities like Aadhaar, and which is that typical use case will go on for a retail CBDC or a wholesale CBDC? That will be part of this overall upcoming few months, right? So although we can implement like other countries have done to start with retail CBDC for a few of the use cases, say example wheat coin or a milk coin in some areas, and use the actual paper currency or dilute that paper currency in form of a virtual currency, right? And use that. And today, wherever we are sitting in 2021, we have larger incentives of BIS, right? So banking infrastructure settlement, who are driving this ecosystem as a part of agenda, right? Their KRA is that how do we really create a digitalization for this paper currency across the world, right? And we have learnings from the countries like China or Bahamas or Cambodia and so on, right? Who has done some of those exercises, failed or learned from that, right? I think whatever we will bring on, I think as I said earlier, we'll have one of those best CBDCs. The monetary policies which we involve compared to Singapore and smaller countries are huge and complex. I think CBDC, when we'll have additional products or additional instruments apart from mutual fund or any other thing. We'll see some more apart from CASA, right? Savings or current account. We'll have a much more incentive, much more products when we'll have a CBDC in form of a virtual currency in India. I think work is happening. So let's not expect that this is something which will happen 1 month, 2 months being announced. UPI took 4 years, right? Since inception of the first paper, followed by the deployment, evaluation. So I think this is new technology. We need to really see many more other aspects, right? And we have to learn from the whole ecosystem, with the way other 60 plus central banks are doing. The ultimate incentive of the CBDC will be cross-border payment, right? So it will be so easy to do. I think Vinodji was talking about one of those LCs, which involves a lot of paper, right? So even cross-border, it takes a lot of paper, minimum 3 to 7 days to do actual realization or settlement of a transaction. Maybe sometimes it's more than that. CBDC comes, and I think it will resolve all of these kind of challenges. Just like UPI is being utilized, I think Singapore government has tried or been trying with India and some of other countries to do immediate payment. But that too, again, it will be for some minuscule payments, right? Limit will be less to do. But with the CBDC, we'll have an actual, and that will be wholesale CBDC, which is a country to country kind of thing. And within a country, right, I think the way other countries are doing, will go with us slowly, steadily. It will not be a big bang like all of a sudden, just like demonetization, 86% of a paper currency is recycled, right? It will not be that picture. It will be a slow picture. Some kind of a business case we'll take up and we'll move ahead.
Right.
But
great. Thank you. Yeah.
And agenda is there, and it's not like that we are just sitting and waiting for others to do. We are also part of this whole ecosystem. Yes.
Yeah, great. So before we take on the question and answers from the attendees, just a quick fire round. So, what's the next step which you suggest companies to take, and how they should look in from the blockchain perspective? Starting from the Rama Devi ma'am, if you can, give your insights, a quick one, and then we'll go on to the question and answers, please.
Well, there are going to be more use cases. I represent the government, so I would be talking from the government perspective. So there are going to be more use cases from the government sector. But the only challenge that the government looks at it is like we have different, platforms, different companies developing solutions. So at the end of the day, when we look at actually cross-department information flows, then how do we manage these different, solutions? Interoperability is what I know it's not an easy solution right now, but that's where we need to go in terms of blockchain. Say, I actually, DLT develops some certificate, a record system for me. Then another company, develops another solution. So if I need to actually make the system talk, how do I do, Right. So that is one area that the company should look into it. That's one. And since government handles large number of transactions, right? Whatever we do, it's in scale and size, huge in scale and size. So performance, maximum number of transaction volumes, blockchain has a certain limitation right now. So that can be worked upon. Yeah.
Wonderful. Over to you, Anu.
Yeah, so I think, here the key role that the government is going to be playing, especially in the initial few years, is for us to be able to set some standards and guidelines, because this innovation technology has just completed the hype cycle. So initially, if you look at life cycle of any of these emerging technologies, the initial hype cycle is always to be able to prove the value of the technology itself, how it can be used, what it can handle, where it should be used, etc. So that's always our starting point. Then when you want to take it especially to a public domain with some of these government use cases that we spoke about, or more public centric use cases at a larger scale, that's when you would need government organizations to set standards, set guidelines, prioritize some of these things for us. And that's where most of the effort that I feel is going on right now. So right now, the conversations that are happening with different governments, whether it's a traceability conversation, supply chain finance conversation, digital identity conversation. And again, these are not all different from each other. These are all going to get interconnected at one point one point or the other in future, definitely, right? That's how we are predicting it. It might start through different routes, but eventually we will reach a point where this is going to happen, right? Where all of this is going to submerge and come together. The second point, I think, what Ramadevi ma'am you made about was in terms of volume, transaction, etc. That's also another thing that we are aggressively working on. Now, luckily, with the advent of higher computing speeds with 5G, etc., we've been able to make a lot of breakthrough around that as well, right? So now, if you look at the number of transactions that the technology itself is handling, has come, I would say it has gone at least 1,000 times more than what we were doing even 3 years back. And that's the change that has happened within a span of 3 years. So you can only imagine that and especially if you look at the volumes that have happened, especially in the financial sector, these platforms should be able to handle those volumes as well. So I would say as a responsibility from a service provider like IBM or anybody who's a service provider today, that their responsibility would be to make sure that the technology gives the right value that we are looking at. The technology is able to support the vision that we have. And from the government side, their vision or their focus area should be, how do I make sure that this technology works for everybody? Sorry, yeah, go ahead, Inder, please.
Yeah, thanks. I'll go to Vinod because we are just 5 minutes into the closure and I don't want to jump the time period. Yeah, Vinod, one and then one out question which is there I would like to ask from Prasanna. Yeah, Vinod, please.
I think so maybe I'll just touch upon a few other things from a legal standpoint. If you look at, I think the additional problems, I think that needs to be looked at, because I think as we know, basically there could be a node which could span across multiple geographies, so which jurisdiction apply. Similarly, I think that data privacy and protection things in terms of when you are basically dealing. I think it could be across continents, and so GDPR kind of issues need to be looked at. I think third thing is essentially, if you look at from this whole thing, it's smart contract. So the contract, the physical contracts are codified. So you need experts who can, in case of dispute, I think there has to be someone who should look at it. And particularly, I think if you look at in terms of the public blockchains, if there is a dispute, who is the intermediary? Whom to basically approach? So I think some of these things are important. In addition, I think the entire development is happening on multiple networks. So interoperability of the networks is something I think that would be one of the things to look at. And last but not least, I think this is not only just a technology migration. I think it also, if it just happened like that, you won't get much value. It requires business process redesign also to be looked at. Because when you are just moving, I think the business process redesign is a key aspect of it. And that's what we have done in case of Walmart, which is one of the largest full-scale production in the full-scale blockchain production in the world, is basically where we have reduced the business process of freight audit process from 11 steps to 5 steps. And that is done along basically in cooperation with the IoT data, etc. So I think some of these things are
thanks. Thanks, Vinod. Thanks, insightful thoughts. And one question which is there from the people who are attending it. So it's for everyone, but Prasanna, it's being pointed to you. Once the most thought, it's from Premji. So his question is that once the most thought drawback of blockchain technology is the transaction speed compared to the existing gateway technologies. How are we going to increase the number of transactions per second? Your views on that?
So if you allow Inderjeet, I can take up that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I have seen those days of a credit card transaction, right? A customer is doing transaction and the merchant has to call to the switch company whether the transaction is reached or not. So that's the day which I have seen, I have been part of that kind of industry also. And today we have seen, right, to MasterCard, Visa or RuPay, the kind of a transaction volume we see on UPIs. That is how the growth we have seen in the payment industry. Similarly, blockchain, I think this question, right, a blockchain has a drawback. I think it depends upon what type of blockchain we use or what type of fabric we use, or whether it is a Bitcoin, the kind of a consensus algorithm being utilized, right, proof of work. And you, me, or Mr. Premji can come together and create our own consensus, which could be the more faster and which doesn't require maybe mining, right, which is for a private network. So that's how is attraction. Today, I have seen some of those fabrics which are doing transactions more than visas, right? So example, account aggregator. The account aggregator specification says they need 25,000 TPS, right? And I have seen one of those startups working on this kind of expectation. So I think throughput may not be the challenge for a blockchain kind of a technology, because based upon type of use case, for example, tomorrow we'll build on CBDC, right, which will require much more kind of a TPS. So similarly, throughput, I think type of use case will drive that technology improvement. And we have seen such a companies, right? DLT Labs, we have seen such a kind of use cases. There are other tech companies like Oracle, TechMs, or IBM's, Infosys. They will not stop for the whatever is the current drawback, right? We have seen MS-DOS, right, in 82, and we have seen Windows 10, we have seen Windows NT, we have seen recent smartphone carrying Windows or Androids and iOS. So likewise, if you look at blockchain, the traction and the improvement in the blockchain or research area in the last 5 years is huge compared to what we have seen on the internet or normal operating systems. So that is the answer. So in a nutshell, just to support Premji, sir, our competition is our own organization versus the blockchain version of our own organization. So if we are ready for that version, I think that's how we are really moving ahead with the right journey.
Yeah. Thanks, Prasanna. We are just 1 minute short, and one last question from Rama Devi, ma'am. Jinu, he's really complimented Telangana government and having the projects live. So his question is that it would be great if they can publish white papers on each of their findings and opportunities uncovered while implementation So just a quick answer from your side, ma'am. It will be really great before we close.
Sure. We are working on that. We'll share it soon. It will be available on our website. Sure.
So thank you, everyone. I think we are right on bang 1 o'clock and we are closing up. And thanks all the panelists for such a insightful and wonderful, discussions and so many takeaways which have been there from this panel discussion itself, and government-wise, the industry-wise, the startup-wise, really wonderful. So I thank each one of my panelists today for the discussion and insights. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
So moving on to next, we have Dr. Kalpana Sastry, Managing Director, Agri-Hub Foundation, Professor Jayashankar, Telangana State Agriculture University, Hyderabad. And along with Dr. Kalpana ma'am, we have our co-founder and CIO, Mr. Singh.
Hello, ma'am. It is so honored to have this fire chat discussion with you. And so I am excited to find out a lot about agriculture, tech, and technology in agriculture aspects, right? So let's start with the very basic and very fundamental thing. Like how technology in general is required for agriculture and how it is changing the landscape in which agriculture is moving ahead. And given the fact that agri is one of the most important base of everything what we do, right? Because everything is related to manpower. Manpower transforms into tech, and manpower actually comes from certain food grains which are produced. So ma'am, over to you, ma'am. So what?
First of all, thanks for this opportunity. The fact that agriculture, there's a special session on agriculture itself shows the intent of the host that this sector has been reckoned as an important sector for this technology. And I think we are in a session with post-lunch. So, the whole life centers around food and how we grow it and how we consume it and whether we are consuming it well or do I have to do a diet and then go in for health and wellness programs and things like that. So if you really look at it, everything centers on that small little grain which we start our morning with. Okay. Having said this, I firmly believe today we are in a era where ag tech or technology is traveling into the agri-food systems is a reality. It's a reality which most of us conservative people in agriculture systems may have difficulty to accept it, but then it has become over the past decade a real thing. And it is needed also in my view, particularly because as an agriculture scientist, we are always part of our system where we say, produce more. You have more of malnutrition or hunger at the global level. So you need to continue with this saga of production. But added to that, in this new scenario, we have to have better production, infuse efficiency, infuse the element of precision, and also develop a system where the growers themselves stand to be better off economically. You're also challenged in a world where you are saying the agri sector uses the maximum amount of natural resources. So you need to have an ecological and environmental secure system, even if you are using technology to advance your goals. So the scenario is changing from what I was a student of agriculture a few years back. But the mantra continues that I have to produce good food, better food, and give better incomes to the growers themselves, including farmers. So
ma'am, just taking that. Yeah, so taking that forward, you talked about precision, how to production more, because as a civilization, we are growing, our population is growing, so that the number of mouth that needs to be fed is growing. And the land resources are limited, natural resources are limited, water is limited. And so that's where I feel technology plays a very important role as we go forward in order to increase either the agri product or the amount of wastage which can be reduced either from the start or at the value chain or at the supply chain. And we at DLT Labs feel that blockchain is the most suited technology currently in this current perspective, because we see that agri is one of the very important commerce which actually started when the civilization started, right? That's where whether you can say at that time food grains were not there, it came later, but any type of things, according to me, which is feeding a mouth, is actually a form of agriculture, and it is a part of an agrarian society. So in that particular context, we see since blockchain at a very core manages the distributed data, or I will say it is in current scenario, it is the most elegant technology on which most elegant solutions can be built, which can manage the distributed data, and ultimately whatever frictions or inefficiencies in any business processes, considering I'm considering agriculture is a business, because there is a handshake, there is a movement of capital, and there is a wealth generation as well. So in order to do that thing effectively, we need to actually address the core issues around distributed data. So we say at DLT Labs, there are certain problems around distributed data management, that is around transparency, privacy, data governance, and data integrity. So if we solve these issues at core, every business get benefited from it. Each business solutions comes in different form, because every business solutions have different actor. They need to certain humanizing factor into them, because each actor is different, each player which interact with him, it's different. So coming on to that particular part, how much importance is required in terms of being any technology which is getting used in agri-tech to be human-centric, or putting on those values of human core principles, and I think you will be able to describe it in a more better fashion.
Yeah, first of all, I must also say we have come a long way. Today agriculture is a business sector, as you rightly said. You must also remember that we are into a globalized production system, and the distribution of the products which are coming out of this sector are also traveling across the countries, across different centers. You have a whole scenario thanks to colleagues like you from the IT sector. So you have a lot of travel people going from home country and relocating to the work sites. But at the end of the game, the palate and the taste for food is the same as in your native. So which means there is a huge opportunity of business of agri-food stuff traveling across the traditional markets into the open markets and in the global level. Mm-hmm. If that is the thing, there's a new mantra which we call it as the supply chain, and the supply chain routes are now varying. They're becoming longer as the distance goes also. As well, when you're going into the globalized food trade and all, you also have to have assured delivery. The traceability factors start stemming into the whole system. And personally, I feel if livelihoods of the growers have to improve, definitely we need to look at markets beyond the boundaries of our traditional homes. And if that part has to come, probably efficient logistic management and efficient more methods, tech-driven methods for product safety, to tell the consumer that the product which has traveled across this entire supply chain is safe, is the type which you wanted to actually buy. So that message has to go. You're also now not confronting a new emerging sector of consumers who are quite health conscious. Wellness is their main motto, and they're looking for trusted type of delivery of the food products. In all this chain, personally, since I'm talking to DLT, I think use of one of the technologies like blockchain can have. I'm not saying that is the solution. Please, it forms part of a bigger platform of several technologies, an integrated model of AI, IoT with the blockchain is perhaps what is needed in agri sector. Having said that, deploying such technologies into the agri sector have their own challenges. And that's something which we really have to look at it if we want to have a successful model in it.
Okay. So ma'am, picking up certain few pointers from what you have just spoken, one thing about increasing the farmer incomes, right? How to make sure that the people who are producing are getting fair cost out of it and are able to sustain with the livelihood, because these has been a repeated narrative as well as a reality. The people who produce the output are actually not getting the sufficient in order to maintain their livelihood. And we see a lot of problems around that. And in that particular, if people are not very well compensated, it actually also leads to the fact that there is always a disenchantment with new fresh blood coming into this particular sector, right? So just to add on to that particular thing, so why we say that blockchain is an elegant thing, and you are totally right, it's not only one technology which solves each and every problem. It is actually an ecosystem, but blockchain provides the bare bone or the backbone of that particular ecosystem where multi-party technology can come and integrate it, like whether it's IoT or whether AI, because ultimately blockchain at a very core layer, it's a network which allows certain business rule which have data coupled to it. So it means you transform the data and wrap it around the business rule in such a way that it becomes immutable, it becomes transparent. And for any of the technology which works on data, especially the technology like AI and technology like IoT, both of these technology are very much data centric. Either they consume data or either they pump data into the system. It is very much essential that the backbone on which these data rails are driven or the data rails are built are immutable, that cannot be fudged, that cannot be counterfeited, or that cannot be manipulated in any way. So that's where the blockchain comes in with the most elegant solution. And that's what that was, I will keep on repeating, it's the most elegant solution in current scenario, in current form. As we progress probably 5 years down the line, maybe the technology will get renamed or something else will come up. But in this current scenario, we are moving ahead in a direction in which we see that blockchain is the most suited when we counter the problem around data, the problem which is more data centric and problem which has more to do with authenticity of the data, where end party relies on how authentic the data is. So now coming on to that part, whether it's the farmer who is selling or whether it's the consumer who is consuming it, for both that authenticity and the integrity of the value chain and the supply chain from where it is taken up, who is consuming, becomes very important. And
but I think Ajay, one thing we have to remember, conceptually it's great. Conceptually, this is the answer which we can give with a technology solution with least amount of probably even investments. It's great, but in other sectors, there will be some pain points when we are deploying this technology. So that's something which we really have to delve, and try and work out. I was actually reading after we interacted last time. I was reading some paper, and it's a pleasant surprise that at the global level also, I could find almost about 50 subsectors in the agri-food value chain, where already there have been initial attempts of deployment of blockchain as a solution. Right from agri or the food part, aqua, that is the fish, dairy sector, then you have the poultry sector, the eggs which are being marketed. There are exciting opportunities for developing solutions using this technology. But perhaps the major pain point in all is the data sets. the type of data sets which blockchain developer or the software developer requires perhaps is new to the persons in the agri sector. We have huge data sets, but data fragmentation is a major issue in this sector. And perhaps this is what we really need to look at if we want to develop a customized solution. So that's data is one issue. The other is, please understand, in agri-food sector, it is a multi-layered sector with multiple actors across the value chain. And the value chains are different. So the purpose is important, the people are important, and the produce is important. If all these three P's are in one place, perhaps we can have good use cases and solutions which can stem out of adoption of blockchain in this. And that's exactly what is happening now. Right in our own incubator where I am situated, I have one more important player is this whole chain of deployment started with big companies. I know one of the first entrant was IBM, also blockchain for foods, processed foods. So what I'm trying to reaffirm is we should know what is the end product. Is it a value addition processed food, or is it the coarse grain which I'm looking at? Okay, that's the produce part of it. The other part is the type of people I'm catering, the customers as well as the actors in the value chain. If I'm looking at a high-end product like ice lettuce, which one of my startup is actually working on deploying blockchain for a export firm. The whole solution is of different nature. The architecture will vary. But if I'm using the same technology for understanding and bringing the fintech element or the finance or the understanding it as part of a decision-making tool for administration of some of the schemes of the government or the insurance schemes, the architecture of the solution will be completely different. So the message I'm trying to say is awesome tool, but we need to customize it, taking the 3 P's in place.
Correct, ma'am. Correct. So that's totally correct. And it totally depends upon, as you rightly mentioned, system which is specific to finance or value chain transfer, or system which is there to make sure that high-end produce which are getting exported and people require to get the authenticity, whether it is authentic or not, they want to know the source and how the governments are deploying their beneficiary schemes and all those, whether it is reaching to the end customer or not. So there are various verticals I see, but ultimately it comes down.
Ajay, I think we should not miss one more point. In case of, sorry for interrupting you, in case of food, the regulatory bodies, HACCP or the regulatory compliances, that's a long process, which is needed if you want to go into the global trade. You can use this tool to convey to the regulators the efficiency and the what we call the natural attribute of your food product. Mm-hmm. Those safeguards which are as part of the regulatory system will be definitely to show the compliance would be, this tool will be of immense use. Apart from that, I'm talking about a country like India, where you have several traditional agricultural products which have made their name at the global level because of their association, what we call as certification or the geographical indication. So you're talking about a country which has made a lot of investments for a commodity like Darjeeling tea, which has a certification to it. So blockchain has the capability of trying to understand the value chain and traceability of these, authentic traditional food products, agriculture products, which have businesses and export value across. Those are also equally important, and it has the potential to become part of the inspection authority itself if we can develop good solutions. That's what I'm trying to convey. So you have 4-5 areas, distinct areas where you can easily think of solutions. But
Sure,
a lot of work is there.
Right,
A
lot of work is there, that's for sure. A lot of implementational work, a lot of operational work, and a lot of rethinking in way the business are built. So a lot of business transformation are also required, because things are not going to change if we try to work the business in the same fashion and try to adopt technology. So the benefit of the technology will only come when business undergoes certain kind of transformation and actually starts using the power of internet, power of this network effect which blockchain brings, start using the power of data integrity, compliances, and auditing possibility on that particular data backbone. And what I was just trying to say, so we see that blockchain is a backbone layer on which all these vertical rest. So whether it's finance, whether it's compliance, whether it's auditability, these all are the pillars, or I can say the verticals, which are going to consume these backbone. And without this new technology inception earlier, since the backbone was not very healthy, it was very difficult to actually come up with a solution which provides a more holistic thing, or provides a thing in which consumer as well as producer or all the parties within the system are able to trust it, right? You always require a middleman or a third party to come in between and acts either as a broker or act as a dealer or acts as a somebody who is certifying things, right? And it was all those things were getting too centralized. And I think that's where this particular business transformation and business evolution can happen, and which can have a transformative effect on agriculture industry. And ma'am, coming on to that same part, so also there are certain things I think which are happening already as with your incubations around blockchain technology. There are certain products which has been getting incubated. So if you can talk more about it around those.
Thanks a lot. I think this is a good opportunity to tell what we are doing, our initial baby steps only. We have one more thing we should recognize and acknowledge is the young startups and entrepreneurs who are entering with this, with their ideas to use this tool into is commendable, I would say. At least I have about 4 of them who are actively working, and we are giving them a platform to validate their ideas in real farm situations. So we have one of our startups who is actively working on one value chain, that is the seed production. You know, in agriculture, seed is the start, but it's always been the spurious seed has always been a concern. Certified seed, getting it from the correct vendor is a big challenge for most farmers. And if I could develop a system through the association with the startup to give a solution for by which a farmer comes to know that the seed he is purchasing is the variety he is looking for. It has gone through, you know, normally seed production, there are several steps to get the certified seed, which is accepted practice as part of the certification agency. So we are trying to utilize this technology through, particularly in rice seed. And we are happy that the results, initial results are really showing the potential of it. More important is consumer acceptance also. So the startup works with the farmer right through the entire stages, and then we try to build a formidable situation, a situation where the acceptance is also there, and very pleasantly we find that many of the farmers have. Similarly, we have another startup which is actually trying to develop a solution for certification of a Telangana, variety, not variety, GI product, potential GI product of Tandoor dal. The state is famous for this particular type of pigeon pea variety, which comes out of a particular location in a district, in an area of Tandoor near Vikarabad. And we are trying to work with the farmers and the farmer groups, deploying this technology to authenticate and give a technical audit of that particular product from that area. So there are endless type of solutions, which we can work on. But one thing is for sure, it is not one answer for all in agriculture. It has to be customized and work. As an incubator, I feel very nice that we are able to provide that space for budding entrepreneurs using this technology, and with the help which we are getting from even the government of Telangana and IT department, we are able to actually bring a lot of entrepreneurs with the AgTech into the AgTech stream, and then provide them the real farm situation so that they go back with good business solutions using this technology. So blockchain, yes, but again, I repeat, it's not an answer. It encompasses a lot of answers. So
right, ma'am.
Message is change has to be in the researchers, in the startups also in the governance of this tool. So, from the policy makers, new platforms have to be built for accepting this tool as part of the agriculture supply chain. And that's important message. I would, urge some of the policy makers to understand that this has got a potential, but we need to build an enabling system so that this tool, along with other tools, is accepted into the system.
Great, ma'am.
I hope, Ajay, I have answered what you wanted.
Right, ma'am. And we are nearing end time. But I think if you would like to discuss, we would have gone days discussing on the same. So I want to end at the point there. Okay, it's all thumbs up for blockchain as such, blockchain for agriculture. But we understand it will require a lot of adoption as well as a lot of other technologies to come and collaborate.
Yeah. All the actors have to converge.
Correct.
That's it.
We
should go into the co-convergence and the co-innovation platforms.
Correct, ma'am. And as DLT Labs, we are all working in that direction. We are working closely with Government of Telangana. We will also try to be part of certain of the incubation which we are doing. We have certain ready-made platform, out-of-the-box platforms, which actually does track and trace very well, which has been deployed successfully with as one of our biggest enterprise blockchain network deployment. So we will like to explore all these problem statements with you and hope we can come up with a solution which works in everybody's advantage, and the farmers as well as the consumers and everybody takes advantage of these new upcoming techniques.
We look forward to working with you all.
So we have 2 minutes, guys. If anybody has any questions, please.
No, I welcome you here. Please take it as an invitation to you and other part of the audience people. All of you, you are welcome to come here. We would be very eager to work with most of you. Ultimately, our goal is that farmer whom we are working with.
Okay. Right. Thanks, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Good. It was nice talking.
Thank you so much. It was really a fireside chat between you and Ajay, and the insights that you guys have provided on blockchain in agriculture. Really, it was an enlightening session. So we thank you from DLT Labs, from all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Kunal Bhasin, Senior Manager and Blockchain Lead, KPMG Canada. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Devi, and thank you to DLT Labs and the Telangana government for having me here. I do have some slides to share with all of you, so please allow me to share my slides, if I can, maybe.
Now you should be able to, Kunal. Let me know if you have any difficulty.
Thank you. Amazing. Can everyone see the slides? Maybe can we get a confirmation?
Yes, we can.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. So I'll start with a very brief introduction. So my name is Kunal Bhasin. I'm a senior manager in KPMG Canada in their advisory risk practices, and I lead all of our blockchain and crypto asset efforts across the firm. So it's not just specific to enterprise blockchain solutions, which is going to be the focus of our discussion here today. but I also lead everything that has to do with crypto assets and the institutionalization of these crypto assets across institutional investors and financial services. So without further ado, what I want to discuss with the group here today is share some of our experience working in the healthcare practice and a blockchain interoperability pilot that we did with the Food Drug Administration in the US for track and trace of the pharma and drug pharmaceuticals. So starting with a quick background, essentially the Drug Supply Chain Security Act governs the pharmaceutical sterilization requirements to increase traceability of medications in the US market and aims to protect consumers by eliminating counterfeit drugs and identify product diversion. So currently the pharmaceutical manufacturers are required to encode unique serial numbers and other relevant data associated with products such as global trade, item number, lot number, and expiration date on drugs that are supplied to the market. So as we go through this entire presentation, what you'll see is I'll be sharing some of our core challenges, some of our learnings from there, and the results of the pilot that we took place. So in addition, one of the things that I want to mention is that manufacturers must have, according to the DSCSA, the manufacturers must have systems in place to verify serial numbers and be able to validate transaction history to support any of the investigation. So today, the encoded data that's hosted in the manufacturer's internal systems, whereas in the future, the goal is that the serialization data needs to be shared with all of the participants in the value chain as the product moves through the supply chain among the distributors, the third-party logistic providers, the repackagers, and the dispensers as well. So this has been a great challenge for the industry, as the pharmaceutical supply chain consists, even in the US, it consists of a complex network of participants with various levels of interactions, ownership, and accountability with limited or no visibility to end-to-end product movement from manufacturing to the point of dispense. So the intention was to build an electronic interoperable system to verify, track, and trace prescription drugs as they're distributed across the country. We had 4 key participants as part of this pilot. We had Merck, which is one of the largest drug manufacturer in the US and North America. We had a technology provider that was providing the solution and building the solution as part of this pilot. We had Walmart that acted as the dispenser, and our firm KPMG that was acting as the subject matter expert on the healthcare industry as well as the blockchain solution for it. And our focus primarily was from a risk and governance standpoint, and also enabling all of the participants in the pilot understand how the process flow, how the interaction across these different participants work in the supply chain, and how can we enable the electronic and interoperable system to verify, track, and trace the prescription drugs. So moving on to what were the core challenges that the industry was facing, or that the FDA was looking to address. Interoperability was the number one challenge. That is the ability for multiple party systems to interact with each other in a secure manner. Today, the pharmaceutical industry, in the pharmaceutical supply chain, it's comprised of all the manufacturers, the repackagers, the distributors, dispensers, and third-party logistic providers, as I mentioned earlier, and they have no visibility or have very limited visibility into the product movement beyond any direct interaction that they used to have with each other. The second challenge was exchanging of the transaction information at the unit level. So it was really not at the box level or at the core lot number level. It was at the unit level, which was what the goal of this pilot, and exchanging all of that transaction information across these different participants in the value chain in a safe and secure manner. The third core challenge was to address the volume of the data that would need to be exchanged, and the transaction speed that was needed to support several ownership changes for each unit which was also a concern for the industry since the expected annual transaction volume to support this interoperability could exceed 15 billion records annually. So moving on to the key objectives as we moved into the actual understanding what were the key requirements from the FDA, from the various participants, understanding how can we address these challenges. So we had primarily 4 key objectives as we went into this pilot, and as we engaged into discussions with each of the parties involved in the pilot. So number 1 was, can blockchain provide a common record of product movement by connecting all the disparate systems that exist at the organization, at each of the different organizations, to meet the interoperability requirements in a secure way? The second key objective that we had was, how can we increase trust among these supply chain partners via an immutable distributed ledger for increased trust, that is, single source of truth? The third piece was, how can we trigger product and increase visibility to the relevant supply chain partners in the event of a product investigation or recall in support of patient safety? And lastly, how do we improve patient safety in the event of a product recall? How can we notify these patients, or how can we actually notify any of the participants involved during the supply chain that a product has been recalled or is part of an alert that needs to be addressed? So what that led us to do is build 4 key solution functionalities and look into these 4 key solution functionalities as we build the solution. Number 1 was track and trace. And I've heard also Kalpana ma'am talking a lot about the track and trace in the agriculture industry, and it was not any different as we look to do in the pharma supply chain. The goal was enabling the tracking the provenance of these drugs at the unit level as well. So the next one was verify. So how do we verify that a particular drug is not a counterfeit drug, is something that has been actually enabled, is manufactured by the manufacturer, in this case Merck, and not only Merck having the ability to confirm that yes, it is a valid product, but also for the other value chain participants able to verify that the product that they received, let's say the third-party logistic provider or the dispenser, that the product that they receive and that what they're dispensing is a valid product and it's not a counterfeit. And I talked about recall and alert. So in case a recall needs to be handled, in which case any of the value chain participants should be able to inform in a timely manner why we need to stop the dispensing of those drugs, and also being able to identify the exact source of where something went wrong in the value chain and that impacts the downstream participants and enabling them to stop the dispensing of this product as well. And alert functionality was another one. So how do we enable timely alerting to all of these value chain participants, which initially was not as easy as it sounds and as enabled by blockchain. So the results of our solution observations, we spent more than 8 months working with all of the value chain participants in the pilot and the solution provider in this case to build these 4 functionalities. So what were the results? And the way I will talk about the results is in 3 forms. So we'll talk about the solution, and in the coming slides, I'll also talk about the ecosystem as well as and how that ecosystem forms and what were some of the challenges that we faced there and our takeaways, as well as the governance of the ecosystem as well. So it's not only about bringing the different participants together and being able to build a solution, but in our experience, I believe one of the toughest parts of building a blockchain solution is governing the blockchain solution and the participants that are involved within that. So coming back to the solution observations. So the track and trace functionality And I'll just talk about the results and what we were able to demonstrate to these various parties that were involved and the FDA in achieving their DSCSA requirements. In the track and trace functionality, we were able to demonstrate that provenance is accurately captured on the blockchain at the serial level, at the unit level, to create a continuous link of how the product is moving across the value chain participants, with every participant having the visibility that they would need to make adequate decisions in a timely manner. And that's the data privacy aspect of it. So we leveraged permission blockchain in this case, where we were able to maintain permissions for each of the value participants that was just required for them. And it was primarily to make sure that no party is able to see every data point that's available on the blockchain to all participants, but just configuring at each data item level that they needed to see, and that was relevant for them. For example, the dispenser doesn't really need to know that, where exactly was the drug manufactured, but it needs to know that, yes, if the drug was manufactured by Merck, it went through to the third-party logistic provider. It went to a port. All of the data that was shared at the port was customized or was actually enabled by, that data sharing was enabled by blockchain across the value chain participants, and being able to confirm that being able to verify the authenticity of the drugs. That brings us to the verify functionality. So the dispensers and other participants were able to verify the authenticity of the drugs, leveraging blockchain solution and the data that's available, and that was fed onto the blockchain layer. Now, one thing I want to highlight here is it's not that we were looking to replace the existing systems that each of the value chain participants had. What blockchain enabled us to do was build a layer on top of these systems that allowed the interoperability across each of the value chain participants, so that not one participant or not each of the participants had to worry about their own interoperability, but we are bringing all of them together as part of a blockchain layer solution, as part of a blockchain layer, and being able to share the data across each of the value chain participants in a seamless manner. As part of the verify function, we also we also enabled the ability to determine if an alert or recall has been issued for the product by any of the participants. They all should have the record or notification coming to them to confirm that a particular serial of product, a particular saleable drug, is not actually saleable anymore because an alert or recall has been issued for that particular one. Lastly, in the verify function, it was more about enabling the dispensers to know that a particular product is counterfeit, and also enabling to trace back each step of the value chain participant to see where something might have gone wrong, and being able to investigate what happened there. In the recall functionality, we demonstrated that blockchain actually reduced the time to identify the recall product and communicated and alerted all of the partners downstream. We noticed at that time, which took a minimum 3 days for all the value chain participants to find out about it, to actually seconds, which was a huge achievement for the group here, and that was something that was pretty impressive for all the value chain participants, and being able to reduce that time. Now, talking about the alert functionalities, and this is where alerting all of the value chain participants in a timely manner is key, because everyone needs to know, especially for something like drugs, where if a customer or if a counterfeit drug has been consumed, or if a drug that needed to be recalled has been consumed by a particular person, that the FDA wanted to know down to the last participant in the value chain network, where exactly was that product sold. Now, talking about the ecosystem models. So At the end of the day, what blockchain enables us to do is build digital trust across the various participants. And that was one of the goals of this pilot as well. So we talked about the infrastructure and the technology solution. And as part of this slide, I want to highlight what the conversations that we have with various enterprises when we're talking about blockchain and working obviously, alongside DLT, it has been in our experience, an amazing experience working with DLT Labs and seeing how we can actually enable blockchain solutions and achieve the benefits of it in different industries. But regardless of the industry, what we have seen is ecosystem is something that always comes into play. So how do we build ecosystems for enabling the success? And in this case, the way we have approached it with various organizations is there are 3 types of ecosystems: founder-led, partnership-driven, and industry-driven. The pilot that we're talking about here today, it was an industry-driven ecosystem because players within the pharma industry were aligned with a specific incentive, and they were able to leverage their resources to address challenges that were industry-wide, not within their own organization. That was the goal of this, and which is why a lot of times the initial participants in the ecosystem that's being formed are very critical to enabling the success of a blockchain solution. So now, even though this is, the industry-driven was, it was an industry-driven ecosystem, I do want to talk a bit about what we have seen in other founder-led and partnership-driven ecosystems. So if we talk about the founder-led ecosystem, and it's important to determine the kind of ecosystem that you would want to have as part of building and deploying an enterprise blockchain solution, it's important to determine the type of ecosystem you want to drive. In case of a founder-led ecosystem, it is primarily a single entity that defines, architects, builds, and owns and defines the governance of that ecosystem as well. The founder of that ecosystem has full control to either reinvent an existing or create new business models, and also control the direction of the industry and control the speed of how this solution needs to be delivered across the various value chain participants. Now, it does have some risks. So there is a risk of single point of failure, which is the founder in this case, and also the founder needs to make sure that they keep the sponsorship going and the vision going for the ecosystem that they're building. So imagine if a founder is creating an ecosystem and they either lose their sponsorship or lose their vision that they initially set out to achieve, in that case, the whole ecosystem goes down. Now, when we talk about the partnership-driven ecosystems, and these are, there are examples that we've seen in the industry, not specifically healthcare, but also other retail industry partners, where a lot of partnership-driven ecosystems are being built. So in the partnership-driven ecosystem, it's a closed ecosystem with a defined set of partners that are focused on carrying out a common goal, because all these participants share a common incentive. So it is optimized as a well understood problem that the parties are currently facing. And it creates a joint risk and a monetary structure to enable identifying the challenges that they're working and addressing these challenges as a group collectively. The financial investment is from all the different participants, and everyone has an incentive to stay and within the ecosystem and being able to participate in the governance of the ecosystem as well. And this ecosystem is not just limited to industry players or companies, but it could also be the regulators or other policy-driven administrative administrations that are in place within the ecosystem as well. Lastly, when we talk about the industry-driven ecosystems, these are, like I said, players within a specific industry that with an aligned incentive that leverage their combined resources to address not just their challenges, but industry-wide challenges as well. So, and they harness ideas and motivations from various companies in the industry to increase the value potential at the end of the day for the end consumer as well. And now, one key challenge that we see here is the governance and the bureaucracy introduces quite a bit of complexity in the decision making. And this is just one of the takeaways from our experience working in that pilot as well. And these are primarily because of, discussions around potential liability in the intellectual property, and that sometimes slows down the innovation due to various levels of risk tolerance. So a lot of these discussions need to be had as the ecosystem is being formed and set the ground rules, set the what the operating model and what the business model and the governance model is going to be. And as we talk about our experience working not just in healthcare, but overall as an industry, the governance, like I said, plays a key role. So it's really about setting the ground rules for enabling a successful ecosystem. It's about setting the ground rules as to how the ecosystem will be governed, will be created, and it has 4 primary key components, and all of these. This model continues to evolve as we get more experience. But the 4 key components, in our opinion, is strategy. So really, what is the differentiated value that the solution will provide for every participant to agree on what problem they're trying to solve? What is the desired end state for the solution within that industry or within that ecosystem? And also making a decision whether is blockchain or DLT the right solution for this, or is there another way to do this? So all of these discussions and agreements need to happen as an ecosystem, alongside all of the different value chain participants as you're trying to address these and enable a successful blockchain solution deployment at the end of the day. In terms of the business model, it's really about aligning on the incentive model. What are the primary products that will be created and the services that will be provided? Who will provide these services, whether it's the technology provider, whether it's whether it's going to be built in-house. So agreeing on all of those things alongside who will own the intellectual capital, because if the ecosystem participants, some of the ecosystem participants are the ones that are taking most of the cost for building that solution, then that discussion and agreements need to happen in advance. As part of the operating model, it's really about looking into what are the various potential legal or commercial limitations or requirements, and how do we manage the conflicting strategic priorities for these different participants. So if you think about the healthcare example that I was sharing, Merck is only one of the manufacturers. There are numerous other drug manufacturers. They might have competing, obviously these are all competitors, but they might have different strategic priorities. And how do we bring all of these different players into the ecosystem and make sure that they are incentivized to remain in the ecosystem to solve that industry-wide problem? So those are the kind of discussions that need to be had, and the fundamental questions that need to be asked as you're forming that ecosystem to make sure that the participants in that ecosystem are the right ones and are bringing in value and sharing the data that's available to others to be able to make the right decisions. The governance model is another key one, and this is in my experience, in my personal experience, the biggest differentiator of whether a blockchain solution is a successful one or not. So, what is the governing body and the legal structures to support the operating model that has been built? Are we forming a consortium that will be managed by a different leadership, or is there people that from each of the participants that will be involved as part of the governing body? All of those discussions need to be had, and also, how do we add participants to these ecosystems? What are the incentives that we would bring in for the various other participants as well? And what are the rights and responsibilities of each of the participants in the value chain as well? So these are all the discussions that need to be had and that need to be agreed upon as we embark on this journey. And that's something that was very clear from our experience working with the FDA and Walmart and Merck, that these are the discussions that need to be had. And the co-opetition paradigm is something that needs to overcome. So it's really not about competing priorities, but it's about how do we bring in efficiencies into the entire value chain for the good of all of the participants. And that's the incentive model that needs to be agreed upon. So just a time check here. I know we're almost at time, but happy to have a discussion with anyone that may have any questions as well. And I thought, rather than going over what blockchain is and going around the benefits, I thought it might be better to share my personal experiences working on some of these projects and what are the key challenges that we face as the subject matter experts as well, and how, in our experience, some of these challenges can be tackled, or at least attempt to be tackled, and that's where a lot of these discussions need to happen well in advance, not after you've built a solution, you've built an ecosystem, but as you're building this, as you're governing this, and as you want to manage the ecosystem, all of these discussions continue to evolve. There's different discussions that come into picture, but it's important and critical to keep an open mind and keep that vision that was set out in the very beginning in the strategy piece, and make sure that vision stays alive and continues to evolve for the good of the entire ecosystem. So I'm going to pause there and see if there are any questions. I know we're almost at time.
So yeah, thank you, Mr. Bhasin, for sharing with us the blockchain solution and one of the integral components of our ecosystem, that's healthcare. And thank you for gracing us with your presence today. As we all know that the public sector is a critical link in any nation's economic engine, we are moving now to a panel discussion on blockchain in public sector, where we have our co-founder and CIO, Mr. Singh, as the moderator of the panel discussion. As a member of the panel, we have Mr. Rama Iyer, Head Innovation GMR Group. Mr. Iyer is a renowned global thought leader in the blockchain space, and he's a senior advisor for the state of Assam and on the global governing board of blockchain for Commonwealth Youth City, Malaysia. Next member we have on the panel is Dr. Padmaja Joshi, currently working as Senior Director at C-DAC Mumbai, and she has a total work experience of 29 years, including her PhD work. She was an active member in the Standard Development Committee at national level on enterprise architecture for e-governance. Next, we have Mr. Ajit Khurana, Advisor, Global Crypto Projects, and he's a leading name in the cryptocurrency industry. He's the former head of the Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Committee, which is a part of IMAI, that is India's foremost industry body for cryptocurrency. Next panelist we have is Mr. Tanmay Banerjee, blockchain architect, Boeing. And Mr. Banerjee has delivered solutions in area of trade finance, supply chain, 3D printing, defense contract handling, government document handling, robotic payments, parts tracking, IoT, etc. And lastly, on the panel, we have Mr. Gary Pound, who's the co-founder, SDLT and Sapio Asia Company Limited. Mr. Gary Pound is also a co-founder of several other fintech startups and has almost 40 plus years of experience in operational and project management in Europe, Central America, and Asia. So here are the panelists that we have. Over to you all. Welcome to Unblock 4.0.
Hello, everyone. I'm honored to have such a panel with me. Hello, Padmaja ma'am.
Hello, thanks.
Ajit.
Hi, glad to be here.
So the panel, it's a very interesting panel. We have people from people who have implemented something in public sector, interacting with public sector. We have people from crypto background also. We have a solution architect with blockchain architect also with us. So it's a fire-packed panel with each and every component which is required to have a great blockchain discussion. So to start with, I will ask every one of you one by one to just in 2 minutes give certain insights into what you are doing with blockchain in public sector. And we will try to keep this introduction very short, and then we will delve on into each and everything in a detailed manner. So we can start with Padmaja ma'am, with you.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone, and nice to be here with you all. Currently, I'm from a government domain. We are getting multiple opportunities to work in various sectors in India, and India is progressing or doing a lot of work even in blockchain. Very recently, you might be aware of that in Telangana, M-voting, that is mobile-based voting, was given a dry run. Just yesterday we completed the voting, and this particular application is completely blockchain based, so rather using multiple emerging technologies which includes AI and blockchain. So the registration and voting, everything is being stored into blockchain, and the counting is done based on the blockchain data. So it's a very good example of blockchain, I think, and in future we look forward to evolve it as a very good solution and can be used in the main elections as well, which of course depends on multiple factors, but yes, technologically we want to make it possible. Second is you might have heard of now in India, multiple educational certifications are now available and are stored into blockchain, so that there will not be any kind of fake document or fake identification coming out stating that these are the fake mark list and we will be getting admissions based on them or getting jobs based on it. So to avoid that, basically we wanted to have the tamper proof or tamper resistant kind of a document storage, where for all these kind of certifications we do have a blockchain based applications where the POCs are done for this. And very recently we have also done this kind of implementation in Jammu and Kashmir, where the domicile certificates, when those were delivered to citizens, it was observed that there are certain agencies which were also supplying fake domicile certificates, and citizens were finding it difficult to identify which domicile certificates are correct, because they used to feel that whatever they are having is correct, but unfortunately it wasn't issued by the right authority. So to verify these kind of domicile certificate and make little life easier for the citizens of Jammu Kashmir, we have now introduced one domicile certificate verification system as well. So there are multiple initiatives coming up. Supply chain management we all are aware of. In health also there are a lot of work is happening, and we do have certain solutions where we call it as a proof of existence. Proof of existence is nothing but all of us know that blockchain can be used to store any kind of a data in a tamper resistant manner, and because of that we can make use of it to identify if certain document or certain evidence is actually available or not, or is it the real one or not. So for that, this kind of a system can be utilized. There is a lot of work happening in agriculture also, you might be aware of, especially from the supply chain management perspective, where the seeds, even when the agriculture farmers are taking the seeds, which are the right ones, or because there is a lot of fake supply of seeds. So even to bring out all these kind of applications in India, we are evolving with lot of such. So with a small introduction to what is happening, I will just add one more point. Indian government has decided to work on a national framework of blockchain, where different platforms can be made available for Indian citizens as well as any developers who are doing the work in the blockchain. Already a strategic document in this regard of use of blockchain in e-governance is already released. So there are multiple steps happening in India. So thanks a lot for giving me this chance.
Thanks, ma'am. Thanks. Gary?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're doing a similar thing. We're combining the distributed ledger technology with AI and analytics and several other tools. Our main areas of focus have really been in one project was with the Thai Customs Department, which basically combines the fuel delivery to every aircraft that gets fueled and departs Thailand. So combines something like 16,000 flights per month, and something like 6 international fuel suppliers that fuel those aircraft, combining all the fuel prices and everything else that goes into calculating the duty for the customs department. But we're also getting involved in several other projects. One of them is government subsidies. How do you accurately place the subsidies to the people who it's actually aimed at helping? We're doing a couple of those type of projects with government. We're also quite interestingly working with a few governments now on greenhouse gas ledgers. Obviously, the greenhouse gas emissions policies are becoming much stronger now, and people are being forced to comply. We've got several private clients in Thailand who have to comply with greenhouse gas legislation in Europe in order to export their products, and so we're working with the government to help the government to put down methods of calculation so that medium-sized businesses and small businesses can easily calculate their sort of greenhouse gas emissions and control those emissions, so that when they export their products, they're easy for the importer to accept at the other end, with a full compliance trail, a full calculation of whether the product is greenhouse gas positive or negative, and then an action plan to determine, what can be done to offset that greenhouse gas. Should it be offset at this end, or is it offset at the other end? And the other area where the governments are getting very much involved in Asia is food tracing. They're finding that, once again, compliance requirements within Europe and the USA are getting to such a standard where they need to put very accurate compliance trails in place to track the food to at least the processing level, so that they can see that the food has been processed properly. And in that same field, we're also working with 4 governments within Asia on the halal food tracing, where they want to export and import halal food from the 4 countries involved. But at the moment, there isn't a compliance trail, and so they're having difficulty trusting one another. And so, of course, the blockchain will help with that transparency and trust. As we all know, that's where it really comes into its own. So there are some examples of government projects and areas where we're working.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks. We will circle back on those examples, and a lot of those products are also built on top of our DLSA track, the platform from DLT Labs, where we have collaborated. So thanks for putting all those things. We'll circle back and we'll discuss all those projects in detail, because there is common theme across. So Ajit, how is your experience going on around cryptocurrency and interaction with public sector government bodies?
So as you know, when you introduced right up front and said we have people from crypto, I knew you were talking about me. I will, however, not be talking about famous crypto tokens or any of the price wildness around it. I'll come to the topic of today's discussion. So my work around this space, though I have been part of IIT Bombay as the CEO of its business incubator, that was, I like to call it, in the pre-blockchain era. And today, so presently, right now, at this moment, I'm in Dubai, because there are like a series of 7 conferences happening on 7 days, and I'm addressing most of them. So one of the teams is from IIT Kanpur, which is doing a blockchain-based tracing and tracking of pharmaceutical equipment, especially consumables and medicines, to prevent anti-counterfeiting, as well as to keep track of distribution by government-related health services, to know where everything is and whether everything has reached where it should. The second part, and the first ma'am, whose name I have briefly forgotten, she referred to as proof of existence. Very interestingly, there actually is a very famous website called proofofexistence.com. So tracking of any digital asset where we can take a hash key out of it, it has been a big area of interest of mine. I am working on 2 or 3 3 crypto projects who are incorporating such assets in the area of art, both visual art, video art, as well as audio art. So you could say sound bites, etc. Yet another area in which I have worked very closely with the government, which is a little, I would say, tangential to some of the conversations we have had so far, was with the Department of Economic Affairs, where trying to understand how to use, leverage, harness, account for a bunch of these technologies, their implications, tokenless versus token-based architectures, etc. What is the role of the government, the policy framework around that, etc. So there was an interministerial committee set up, which submitted its findings in February of 20, actually February of 19, if I'm not mistaken, sorry, became public in August of 19. So I have presented in front of that committee also. And one international experience I have had is with the ATO, which is the Australia Tax Office, where a lot of people who are transacting digital assets, it was found that the traditional systems of accounting, which is in usual business accounting, was found to be not completely appropriate for accounting for movement of digital assets and any accrued capital gains or incomes around them. So we came up with a system of record keeping, which actually publicly one of the representatives of the Australian Tax Office, which would be the equivalent of the IRS of India or IRS of the US, had actually said that it is one of the most easy to understand and adopt, both from the auditor's end, that is the government officers' end, as well as from the public's end. So these are some of my skirmishes with the government, public sector, etc., on implications and usage of digital assets which run on the blockchain.
Okay. Thanks, Ajit. So we will discuss later what I meant by crypto part, and because I have certain things which I want to discuss around how blockchain can bring incentivization and behavioral changes, and which can be one of the constant theme given on the blockchain layer. We will discuss probably in great detail in this particular session. Tanmay, if you also can throw certain lights around things going on in blockchain space around your ecosystem with governance or public bodies involved.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are audible, Tanmay.
Okay, great. So Boeing is right now not working with governments, but we want to. We generally have, we generally sell the planes, and government tells that, yes, you need to do an offset. And for that offset will be used for the country. And Boeing generally submits documents for that, right? So when we talk about document management systems, we talk about identities, we talk about tokens. Why not having gaining and taking of that particular document through blockchain? I mean, that's one of the thoughts Boeing has. So I think we have built a solution around that as well. We are just waiting for the government to be ready. I mean, government has definitely, like Padmaja Madam was telling, right? Government has been interested into this particular field, and they have been encouraging a lot. Even we in Boeing is also feeling the same thing. So we see that, yes, there is a need from the government, or there is a push from the government who is trying to push that, yes, we can start doing this. So for your information, ma'am, Boeing already has solutions, and we would be definitely looking at the government to get ready about that. And we are ready to go. So we have multiple solutions around supply chain management, identity handling. Then we have intellectual property rights handling, right? So that is one of the biggest areas which Boeing is working right now. And it is one of those things where you say that you want to have a 3D printing. The plane is flying from Auckland, and you see that there is a part which has got damaged, and that particular part has to be 3D printed in London. So how do you do that? Within 4 hours, that has to be printed down. So you supply that particular design to London-based 3D printers, and it gets printed and delivered when you are staying at the London, right? So that is kind of the technologies which Boeing is definitely looking at. But apart from this, I would definitely like to thank DLT Labs for having me here. Generally, what happens is, in talks of the business, the technology gets lost, right? So we know blockchain from the last decade has been a person, is a technologist who is developing it. nurturing it, and I'm sure it is going to be the next decade which they are going to maintain it. So developers, architects, product managers are the ones who are going to be in the forefront the next 5 years, and they will definitely bring a lot of stuffs. Apart from what Boeing does, what I do is I generally support the community, and I have spoken in 2019 telling that 2019 belongs to developers, blockchain developers. 2020 belongs to the tech entrepreneurs, which we have got a phenomenal success over there. 2021 belongs to the organizations who will build the solutions around and all. But 2022 and 2033, organizations will start pushing the government or the regulators to get something going, and that will belong to the government, and then everybody else will be able to party. So unless that entire ecosystem is done, we cannot complete it out. So I have been helping out the developers, architects, product managers, mentoring out for, like Madam said, that NPCI and Mr. Ajit Khurana said that there are stuffs happening in Dubai. So there are a lot of people whom I do mentor, and it's just done as community support, so that we all learn from each other and we all understand what should be required and how the business will look next 5 years. So over to you, Ajay.
Thanks, Tanmay, for your thought. Thanks, Rama, here for joining us in your busy schedule. So we would like to know about your thoughts, and I think you will require to leave early. So please take this opportunity to grace us with the thoughts around what's happening around government in Assam, and how the blockchain ecosystem is growing up there, and as well as what promises do you see, and how do you see that public sector these challenges are going to be overcome?
Sure. So thanks, Ajay, and hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Yeah.
Just kind of happy to be here. It's been a while, being part of good blockchain discussion. I think Tanmay kind of touched upon some of the things that large corporates are doing. I was actually hoping Ajit will give us some tip or stuff or talk about what's the next Dogecoin, but I guess he just skipped that part. In terms of, I think I'll touch upon the public sector or the government piece of it, and I think Ajit kind of mentioned earlier where some of the ministries have been looking at it with very keen interest and deploying a lot of resources and people, not only like a CBDT kind of a thing, but also in terms of what does it mean for the larger population to be able to invest in some of these asset categories. What do you kind of classify them into, right? And I think whether you like it, you hate it, as a country, as a government, you will need to kind of frame certain regulation of how do you want to deal with it. I think as far as the CBDT route is a pretty straightforward thing, nothing much to be done, which is tethered to your INR, more of a digital version of it. I think it is about the BTC and the altcoins and people holding it. How do you want to kind of deal with the people? And that's where I think exchanges and where it is hosted or regulated, with sovereign entity, how do you recognize them, not recognize them? So I think we still have some distance to cover, and I'm sure people like Ajit are in a deeper know of it, both the challenges and the government kind of playing two-pronged approach in terms of, on one side you have to encourage innovation, startups and entities that are here India based, and not put them at a disadvantage to the likes of exchanges that are hosted in Japan, Korea and other places where people are just flocking there. You're just kind of killing local entrepreneurship. At the same time, how do you ensure there is a framework that is built around so that you do it for the right reasons and not kind of open up the floodgates for nefarious artists and players, right? So I think that continues to be a challenge, no easy way. What I've also started seeing is some of the governments have started taking interest and learning more about blockchain. And I think blockchain is probably as complex as it gets, without getting into quantum, right? I think people just get so confused all the time. And I think whenever I talk to people, whether it's government or even corporates, right? First is you have to start from very basics. People kind of mix everything from a a private hyperledger kind of a play with a Bitcoin public network. So, it kind of starts from there. People just think that blockchain is either crypto coins all put together, everything in one box, right? So I think they kind of find it very difficult. So I think a lot of time goes in terms of just coaching people that there is this industry, it's a technology like anything else, like client server, like people are using. And there are hardcore enterprise blockchain networks out there which people can use. So that is one problem. The other problem is people kind of get overexcited with blockchain, which doesn't do good to blockchain and the industry, where they think that it is a panacea for all else. You throw blockchain at it and it will solve whatever, right? Blockchain can't solve the core business problems, right? I mean, there is a business that works, there is a use case, there is a customer, there is revenue, there is profit, right? So blockchain cannot change any of that, right? Blockchain can help where it is logical, whether it is supply chain, whether it is provenance, whether it is a lot of various systems, solutions, and players who want to be on the same state, whether it is data, transactions, and all of that, so that people can do decisions efficiently. People are looking at the same state of data at the same way and not wasting time, right? And obviously there is a thing of trust, there is provenance, there is all the fungibility, everything that comes with it as a package. So I think a lot of the people get overexcited and then they kind of start blaming that, what, we tried blockchain, it didn't work for us. I mean, you have no idea what worked or what did not work or what we are trying to get it to work, right? So I think there is complex layering of sort, and that's why there is a very smaller segment of people who understand it, who are able to deploy for the right use cases. And that, I think that continues to be relatively smaller compared to other technologies. So I think we kind of continue to grapple with that. And then there is this euphoria of people getting trained on a certain blockchain lever and then trying to see where they can kind of find a job. So I think blockchain as an industry kind of has been really going through a lot of interesting phases. The phase keeps changing. We moved from so-called centralized server, then there was a wave of DEX or decentralized exchanges, and then we moved from there to all this newer fancy NFTs, both fungible and non-fungible types. And then again, people get overexcited, right? So I think we want people to be tapered in terms of getting the excitement level right and use it for the value of it, right? Whether it is rarible set of things which you want to kind of tokenize and hence NFT, fine, great. If there are people on both sides, so be it, right? But I think people also kind of try to game the system and try to put disproportional value on a certain thing and hide the thing, and that kills the thing even before it gets there. So I think those are some of the ills which I think is kind of tough to kind of regulate or stop. But I think I don't know where I started, what was your question, but I guess I just kind of went all across all over. So I'll just kind of pause, let other people kind of weigh in on that or other things that you want to ask.
It was insightful. So just to extend your thought from my side. So we at DLT Labs believe in certain philosophy that business are there to collaborate when you talk about the right use case and right thing. So business are there to collaborate, and we just see that blockchain is that particular technology which solves that collaboration in the most elegant fashion in current set of technology set which we have. And business can only grow, or any profit margin can only come when that collaboration happens. And we see government or public sector as a facilitator or a backbone on which all these collaboration happens, right? Who actually facilitates all these things. As Tanmay told, right, that ultimately the actual growth will come when actually government and public sector starts adopting it. And that's where the facilitation will come out, where every enterprise can also use with in order to transact their trade, in order to go forward and do business across regulations, where regulations are inbuilt within the blockchain layers and those stuff. So that was for sure insightful, Rama. And so we would like to move on to Gary on certain stuff which Gary and us, we have been doing in Thailand. So Gary, if you can point out certain pain or troubles which you did go through, or how was the adoption around the solutions which has been deployed, or the POC which has been running, which are around blockchain, centered around aviations?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, one of the major problems we have is such a vast amount of stakeholders, and to the points that have been eloquently made already, the people don't understand blockchain, and we've spent the last year educating our audience to get them to understand what it is we're doing, why it's secure, why it's better than what they were previously doing. And that's been a big part in terms of getting the stakeholders to believe in the technology and believe that the technology is right for them. But internally within the government, of course, there's governments have difficulty with these new technologies, particularly when they're in their embryo stages, as is distributed ledger technology, because they don't have the policies in place. They don't have the internal policies. You can't actually deliver the data via distributed ledger technology in Thailand up until the point that we introduced the customs aviation fuels distributed ledger system. And so, it's really groundbreaking to be in a position where the customs department are having to rewrite their internal documentation to actually accept the data. So I think there's a number of areas where people underestimate the tasks, shall we say, and those are the three main ones. The state of talking to people about distributed ledger technology today, particularly in the private sector, is like talking to people about the internet in 1998. They just, there's so many articles on the internet that are written with bias, and they don't really give anybody clear indications of how distributed ledger can be used. But I do believe the work that we've done with the government have proved to the government that the distributed ledger, the private distributed ledger, is secure, is safe. The stakeholders are on board. Sure, we have to train them 2 or 3 times, but they are on board and they do want to use this technology because they understand and know that their current issues with reconciling pieces of paper and take those to the customs department to get customs to sign off on a tax rebate, and then take that documentation to the excise department and seeing the excise department do exactly the same thing is extraordinarily painful for all concerned. And so having the distributed ledger where you've got transparency, you've got an audit trail to each, and you've got methods of consolidating the data very easily. It makes so much sense to governments to do it, to replace their existing paper trails with private distributed ledger. Absolutely.
Hey, can I just jump in, Ajay, with your permission?
Yeah, sure, Ajay.
So actually, I just wanted to remark about one thing that Gary said, which reminds me of one of very interesting discoveries at the Department of Economic Affairs. So Gary used the term private distributed ledger. So this reminds me of one of my meetings with the department, where there seemed to be a confusion between what we, at that point I was heading the Blockchain and Cryptocurrency Committee, which was part of the Internet and Mobile Association of India. So I was an industry representative. So what we were saying and what the department was saying, it seemed like we were like a little lost in the language. And suddenly I had a Yahoo, a Eureka movement, and I realized that what we were calling the public blockchain, they were calling the private blockchain. And what we were calling a private blockchain, they were calling a public blockchain. Because in our minds, a blockchain such as the Ethereum blockchain, for example, which is fairly decentralized, is a public blockchain, right? While a blockchain which is controlled by a central agency, such as a government or otherwise an entity, is a private blockchain. While the department was thinking that, if the government comes up with, let's say, an India chain, just to give you a name, which was at that point a popular name, that would be a public blockchain because that would be deployed by the government. So very interesting how, depending on where you're standing, what is public and what is private itself can be 180 degrees apart.
Contextual.
Actually, even I wanted to add one point over here. When Gary was mentioning, I just wanted to understand that in the aviation ministry or in the aviation application, is it really useful to have public kind of a blockchain? Will that be? you have already used in private, and majority of the applications that we see in e-governance do have some kind of a trusting third party. So majority of the applications that we are currently building might be having distributedness into it, but actual blockchain is a private one. So there is only one trusted agency. But how does it work in case of aviation? It is public or only private trust?
It's only private that we use. I mean, to be honest, there's a couple of different schools of thought with regard to private and public. And what we tend to find is that if you are deploying what I call private blockchain, I mean, AJ might have a different view, and of course, I very much focus on the application of the technology with the customer. I'm not really a technology geek, so to speak. I mean, I rely on AJ and the team to support us from the on the blockchain side. So I'm really talking from an application standpoint. And what I try to do, you'll notice I don't use the word blockchain. I use ledger. I use distributed ledger. It gets very confusing when you're talking to customers. You start talking to them about blockchain, you know. So I use private distributed ledger as a way of explaining to them that it's not cryptocurrency. It's not, you know, there is an administrator. There is a trusted party that does the administration of these systems. You do get invited into these systems. You can't just join, you know. So all these things that I say because I've just been through 12 months of getting people to understand what it is we actually do and why it's different from blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and all the other good things that go on in the same technology. It's a bit like what I try to do. It's a bit like when you go into a business and you're selling them a mobile application that's been built on an Apple SDK. You don't explain to them how the internet works. You explain to them how that application is going to help their business. So that's what I try to do. I try and take it away from the technology and say, right, guys, you know, we've got this great, secure, private network that's provided by DLT Labs, and we can configure this in any way you want, and it can eradicate every piece of paper in this airport. Is that of interest to you? And of course, there's interest. Of course, they want to do that. But it is, I do choose my words very carefully. So you'll have to excuse me if I'm not technically correct. It's just what I use to describe what we do.
So, Tanmay, to you, do you think that we as a technologist have complicated the terminologies and the ecosystem around blockchain, that it has become very difficult with a lot of more things coming up, new blockchain coming up, new terminology coming up? So do you think that we as a technologist are somewhere at fault around this turmoil, around making people like it shouldn't be very difficult to explain it to the business community or the public sector as such, right? But do you think that we as a technologist, because the whole blockchain started from a technology, in any case, every technology is, but it was mainly adopted by people around technology. It was mainly adopted by the geeks, people who are trying to do different things. And that's where from crypto to smart contract, then chain code, from public to private, then permission ledger. So do you think at times, are we at fault?
I think there's always a natural phase where there is going to be a complexity in the technology, and if certainly that needs to be explained. And I think that the combination of technologies is not always a clearly defined line. And as Dr. Pamaja said, you know, they use AI, they use analytics in conjunction with the distributed ledger in order to supply a product. So it's not so clearly defined as saying it's either blockchain or it isn't. The way I look at it is at the moment, it's like talking about the internet in 1998. There's no way of avoiding it. You haven't got the tools available to you.
I think we have lost Gary.
I just wanted to add one point over here. I don't know, it might be for the discussion also, because many people always get confused between DLT and blockchain. And somewhere I felt that blockchain is kind of a ledger. So it is like how you can store the records in the ledger, whereas DLT is talking about distributed network, and that is what my perception is, that is how two things are little different. When they combine together, we call it as a technology. I don't know, maybe there can be a debate on that, but that is what my understanding of complete technology is, that we are talking about the network when we are talking about DLT, but at the same time, whenever we are talking about the ledger, it is not like a normal RDBMS. The way we are storing, that storing technique is of a chain of blocks. That's what felt.
Okay, so Tanmay,
I can just quickly add to that, Padmaji. I think,
Rama,
I think people use it interchangeably, but DLT is the larger umbrella, if you will. Blockchain is a subset, but the largest subset. I mean, the other thing easier to look at it is DLT. I mean, the largest thing is defined by blockchain, which is chain of blocks, but it doesn't need to be that way to qualify as a DLT. For example, Hedera hash graph is an excellent example of a non-blockchain, but it falls under the DLT umbrella. So, but given that blockchain is like, say 90-95% of the use case, or that's how it's implemented, hence DLT and blockchain are used interchangeably. That helps.
Ajay, I think that, taking what Gary said, then Dr. Padmaja said, and now, we heard also, is that what has happened is that if somebody uses this has nothing to do with blockchain, but somebody uses a digital wallet. There are many digital wallets today we use, or UPI, etc. Very interestingly, nobody in the pipeline, whether it's the bank, it's the merchant, it's the retail user, or to start out the creator of this digital wallet, none of them talks about the technical architecture of such a digital wallet. None of them talks about how the data is stored, transferred, which are the intermediate bodies. They just talked about click here, then enter data, money goes from point A to point B, or this is your address. What has happened, as very rightly so, as you yourself indicated in the question, is that because of the journey that DLT and blockchain technologies have taken, any discussion, even of the use case, even of something as simple as what has become NFTs today, somehow involves a very technology-oriented discussion. And I think that it is not necessary that this should be the case. And I have found that a lot of people, and when I say a lot of people, I don't mean just end consumers, but people across the entire supply chain, get a little either intimidated or put off when, instead of discussing use cases, we start discussing how those use cases are implemented on technology. So Gary's original point that we tend to make it more technical than it needs to be for a given user has been one of the hindrances in the adoptions.
Right. So that's what I feel. And that's what so we feel that we as a technologist have made it so difficult. And that has called a turmoil, because we do not talk about business transformation. We do not talk about business process automation. We do not talk about business streamlining. And right. So that was my personal opinion. But I think in order for major adoption to happen, probably we should go ahead and say that technology has proved itself. Now, in order to gain benefits out of the technology, we need to do certain business transformation. We need to bring in use cases. We need to prove that technology brings a dollar value, technology saves cost. In certain use cases, as Rama here said, it is not possible that everywhere it is possible. But in case there is a friction in the network, if there is an inefficiency there, for sure, we should try to go and work in that direction. And we as DLT Labs have worked in few of the deployments, one of the large deployment with Walmart Canada, which shows the dollar value benefit. One with the aviation in Thailand shows the dollar value benefit. So that's where I think we need to go, and when we talk probably in public sector, we need to show that it needs to add dollar value, it needs to bring certain automation, it needs to bring transparency. Because as Tanmay will also articulate it, every talks becomes around architecture around how data is distributed, how the blocks formation happens. And I do not see this in probably in AI tech as such, or IoT. Anybody is considering how the AI is working actually, which algorithm is working on it, right? People do see the result and people do see the benefit out of it, but same does not get applied to blockchain. So Tanmay, on the community side, like, do you think that something can be done around the blockchain communities to come up with certain ways to promote and adopt technology across, where we start talking in more of a business-centric terminology?
Okay, let me get into this business-centric terminologies using some architectural stuffs, right? So let's talk about dual ring network technology, topologies, right? So I know most of the people will not relate to it, but what exactly is dual ring topology? What has happened is, like the previous question which you asked, that the technology has let go the thing with relation with the business. And technology adopts. Okay, business requires this. I will give this. I will give you a small example. Let's say I came across one company called as DLT Labs, and they say, hey, you know what? I have an AML solution, which is great. Okay, this is into distributed ledger technology. I say, why do you say distributed ledger technology? Why don't you say blockchain? What the person has told is, you know what? Every blockchain technology, you will have the blocks, you will have the databases along with it, which is deterministic. But what you will end up doing is you will have single database, okay? And that is a single source of failure. A database, when you distribute it across the nodes, okay, that is when it actually becomes a distributed ledger technology. And that person was really right. I think that is what defines the distributed ledger technology. That you distribute the technology across so that it does not make any point as a single point of failure. Be it identity management, be it MSPs, be it databases, be it anything else, right? That's the identification of distributed ledger technology. Now, I made it very clear, the definition is clear now. Now, to make it adopted, like I said, the dual ring topology, every organization right now is like, my solution is best, right? So that's natural. But what if, I mean, you cannot harness the terminology of blockchain or the distributed technologies unless you connect the untrusted systems together, right? So that is where you need interoperability between the systems. Like Hyperledger Fabric talks to Hedera Hashgraph, Hedera Hashgraph talks to Bitcoins, Ethereum, or any polymer technologies, right? So there are multiple ways you can do the interoperability. So once you connect the first ring, the outside ring, okay, with all the organizations which we were talking about, private ledgers and public ledgers. So let's say these are the organizations which are interconnected with each other with interoperability. Now the first ring is done. Now the center ring, the second ring, which needs to be done from the regulators and the government's perspective, that you build the ring so that every other ring of the other organization will be able to use it. Okay, so if you really want to solve this business problem, please solve it using the dual ring problem, where the first ring is from the government and regulators, which is going to happen later. There are multiple places like Dubai and all, where the government as regulators are already stepped in. The first ring is already done, right? So in India, what's happening here is we are first bringing up the second ring. Okay, and then the first ring is getting formed, and then there's a connection between first ring and the second ring. If second ring falls, let's say any startup comes into the picture, we'll be able to use anything which the government is able to provide. And that is when we will be able to definitely and 100% develop the ecosystem throughout. I mean, like Ajay was mentioning, right? It can be a startup, it can be a bigger organization, it can be anything. It can be wallets, it can be cryptocurrencies, right? So unless you build these two, unless you interoperate with these two, the blockchain, the true power of blockchain will not be able to harness. We will not be able to do that. So that's where we will be able to tackle. I mean, that's how we will be able to tackle the business problem over here. Over to Ajay.
Thanks, ma'am. Padmaja, ma'am, we would like to also, since there were certain projects which already implemented in public sector in POC stage at a smaller. So how did you circumvent those problems, and how did the department circumvent those problems around explaining and making it a success?
Yeah, so currently majority of the solution that we have developed are having a single entity who has been sponsoring it. So comparatively taking decisions, and it was driven by that particular organization, it becomes easier. And for us, it was more of a technological challenge, that which architecture to use, are we actually satisfied all the privacy and security related concerns or not, and what can be the issues over there. As I was mentioning earlier, that most of the applications in the government are currently having still that third party trust. Maybe even in land records, you might be having multiple signing authorities taking decision together, but still it is a limited kind of a network. It's not completely like a public network like Bitcoin, where all the parties can get involved and they can be involved into the decision making. And because of that, kind of a consensus which is coming into picture in such kind of applications is mainly from the synchronization perspective. There is not a big decision making happening at the consensus layer. It is happening still at that trust layer or the third party who is deciding, and that comes through the smart contract only. So whatever are the verifications of this, you are right, criteria that you are writing, the rules that you are writing are enough in the smart contract, and they are not required to be taken care at the consensus level. Of course, at the consensus layer, we are taking the decisions which are related to the network. That means if there are certain failures of the nodes, then how the synchronization can take place. And that is only the task which is coming into the consensus layer. As you were also discussing about the telecom very recently, rather 1.5 years back, just before maybe pandemic, you might have heard of that TRAI had tried this with all the telecom providers. There is one blockchain application which has been developed. And this is kind of a public blockchain because all the telecom providers are the nodes in this. But again, I'm not calling it as a public blockchain because telecom providers are limited entities, and we do not have like a normal citizen going and becoming a part of that complete chain. Over there also we do have a similar kind of a thing, where earlier days we used to get SMSs which were a lot of spams, and there were a lot of detections, or rather cyber threats, which were there happening through Jamtada. You might be aware of a region in India from where people used to do the calls and SMSs and try to do the cyber attacks, especially onto the payment systems. To avoid that, this kind of a blockchain is being in place now. So at least whatever SMSs we are receiving now are having that template verified at this particular layer. So whatever is my experience so far with less number of applications, because now here there are experts which have actually implemented blockchain in very diverse domain. Comparatively, whatever applications we have developed are only from the e-governance perspective. We are mainly working into this kind of a trusted layer, and government is trying to build this kind of a trust layer using blockchain in the mind of citizens. So where I said that when I'm verifying, I'm able to verify my domicile, I'm building kind of a trust layer. So that way we are trying to implement that in e-governance application. Where can we and how can we bring that kind of a trust, which will also address certain issues. And of course, in the coming future, since these are POCs, comparatively the scalability performance issues were limited. But if we decide to go into the distributed ledger, of course, there is a challenge of infrastructure as well. Because in case of the centralized application, obviously, the cost was only for the centralized deployments. But now the deployment is multifold. And it does have impact on cost, and it does have impact on the infrastructure requirement. So if we are building it for the whole nation and looking at the kind of population we are having, these are the challenges which will be coming in future. May not be at the POC level, but at the production level, we need to address them. That's what I feel.
Yeah. So, ma'am, just to take that forward, I see it as a myth which comes around costing and other aspects. So for any infrastructure which has to cater to 1 billion of population will be huge, will be required huge corpus. And at times we just do not compare apple to apple, that what is the current costing I am burning on my infrastructure, and if I build it over DLT system, how much I will be required to burn. So at times we do, it is my opinion, we do not look into the actual costing, and we extrapolate things and we come up with certain assumption that, okay, the cost will increase, but ultimately it's data needs storage, ultimately it's compute, there needs to be certain compute run. And as you told, right, building a trust layer which facilitates. So thing is that once you add that value chain, which is facilitating a trust layer for a large entity, right, where everybody is able to grow and everybody is come and able to join, maybe in a private fashion or in a trusted fashion, you are increasing its ambit. So you are exposing it to other business unit, you are exposing it to a lot of so it is just giving more exposure. So ultimately the value will come in, which will commensurate the cost and the price. And as well as the technology is evolving, right? Everything's on technology side. Every year or every month, the price gets reduced. The server costing, the storage costing has kept on reducing in multi-factors from what we used to have in early 2000, what we used to have in 2020, and what we are going to have in 2021 today. So, and anything from you, Tanmay, on this particular side?
Just to add on to you that, just a minute, Tanmay, sorry. I'm just taking a little more, because I do agree that it is actually doing a value add and building the trust layer. But again, that will depend upon how many such kind of multiple instances we are going to create of that particular data, because it is basically a redundancy of data which is helping us build that kind of a trust. So I completely agree that the cost will be reducing in future, but when you start a project, still we have to think about the cost, because the infrastructure will be required.
No, I agree to certain aspects, but I will ask Tanmay to comment on it. I will not put my views there.
So yeah, I will explain it to ma'am. Ma'am, what exactly do you require? Like I was saying about dual network topology. In a network, what you require is a main computer and a disaster recovery, right? So now the main computer is the one which you're talking about. It requires multiple servers and the locations and all, right? You are right. So as a part of the transactions per second or the processing powers or geographical locations, for example, let's say you want the land records to be done, right? So the land records can definitely be done for Karnataka, can be done for Andhra, it can be done for Telangana. So now you need servers for each of them, right? So that it can be easily processed as per the geographical locations. Okay. And once you already have those, okay, any failure can be definitely loaded from a disaster recovery particular place. Let's say, for example, let's say you have disaster recovery enabled in Delhi and Chennai. Okay. So you automatically will be able to restore it back. So I'm just talking about technology over here, but this is how you can think about it. And like Ajay was saying that what it will happen is it will make you feel, it will let the other people, other organizations feel that you are a part of a cloud, okay, and your system is not going off the record at all. Okay, as a part of the cloud, you will be able to bring in a heavily resilient, heavily available system with just few money, and you can make it pay as you go. Multiple organizations onboarding, for example, I was saying about the offset documentation from Boeing. Okay, that will definitely help the government reduce a huge cost. Documentation cost itself is huge. What I heard about Boeing is in a year for multiple Boeing defense contracts only, there are trunks of data which has been given to the Navratna companies for their verifications, and it takes about 3 to 4 weeks for them to do all the verifications. So that cost can be definitely reduced. So there is an opportunity cost which you can definitely fit in for the cost of the infrastructure. And I hope it helps, ma'am.
And ma'am, to add more pointers to it, see, ultimately in centralized also there are data redundancy available for backup and disaster recovery. So ultimately, when you put in blockchain layer, you save those costs. You do not require to have that level of DR. You do not require to have that layer of backup available. You do not require to have those tape backup done, and you do not require to build process around it. So ultimately, it saves a huge amount of cost. And that's where I think at times when we are starting a project, we directly try to put expectation and costing, and we do not do actual evaluation. But once we go, so there will be a time when these two systems are running together, probably there will be a cost which will be incurred. But as you decommission your older systems, what the new system will be as much as cost beneficial around what earlier was. So that's what my point of view, as I have implemented certain very big blockchain networks with Walmart Canada, and we have replaced those with existing legacy systems, and we see that it has been squared off. So whatever cost was earlier going burned into their infrastructure, same is getting burned, but at the same time we are receiving a lot of business optimization, process transformation, business transformation. So we are running out of time. In case anybody has questions to ask from audience, please go ahead. In between, if we do not receive any question, I would like to tackle one more aspects around the behavioral and societal changes with incentive mechanism, which probably a public sector and government can bring about, maybe around waste management, maybe around other type of things. Which do you see any such kind of things currently happening in government sector where people are using it to provide certain incentive mechanism on the network to provide to bring in certain changes around? It can be as simple as making sure that waste management is getting proper, and who are doing it in a proper fashion are getting incentivized for it.
Ajay, instead of answering your question, I'm going to actually add to your question so that whoever is answering it. So one of my areas of great interest in the part of behavioral change, societal change, is in the area of DAOs. DAOs are decentralized autonomous organizations. I'm part of a few DAOs. So DAOs have some characteristics of what we used to call a cooperative. India has a structure called cooperative. There are many cooperatives in India. Then there's a certain degree of anonymity that can come in the DAO depending on how it is structured. There is no board of directors. Members vote and decisions are taken completely on chain. I have been parts of DAO which are at this point making what I would call relatively simple decisions, as opposed to the kind of decisions that often board of directors of public, private, limited companies have to take, etc. But there are several territories around the world, for example, the state of Wyoming in the United States of America, which have started recognizing DAOs as valid organizations. But what is interesting from the public policy initiative is that they are not saying, oh, we recognize the DAO. They are saying we recognize the DAO as equivalent of. This equivalent of is either an LLC, as would be in the case of the US, or as the case of a general partnership in many other territories. I think that this entire structure of DAO, if harnessed and promoted right, can bring about a very fundamental change in business, society change, etc., of the type that you were saying. So if somebody has some thoughts around that also, I would like to hear it.
I think a couple of things. One, obviously, the DAO inherently has phenomenal advantages, and I think it not only brings in democratization, it brings in democratization at different levels. In terms of how a company needs to be formed, needs to be grown, this needs to be dismantled, people bringing in, people holding in that, and kind of removes the clutches of governance, taxation, all of that. So you can kind of imagine things being done very differently. That today it's also very difficult. I think Ajit has been part of multiple DAOs. I have seen some of them in close action. And I think it kind of continues to unravel and peel some of the things that, wow, I mean, these are things that you did not understand. You always thought company means complex. It requires such a length of duration. It requires so much legality, compliance that, that half of the people will say, Chodo, yeah, let's just kind of do what you're doing, right? Let's not do one more entity. I mean, how many times you've heard this over and over again? Like, let's not create one more. I mean, because the winding down process itself is like painful. You do not know how much tax you owe, how much you're given, how much you're paying for it, and all of that. So I think now kind of makes it all of this kind of very simple. But I think the point that I wanted to answer, the question that you brought up was, I think this whole incentivization, there was something that, a couple of years back that used to be called karma points. Not really a government, but more of a foundation-centric thing. We're doing good work, whether it is health, helping people. In fact, that was taken to a next level in terms of, even for employees trying to do things. So the whole incentive mechanism, not only like a government, but even a quasi-government or a private, there's a lot of things that you can incentivize. Today, if you look at it, I mean, if while we were kind of, growing up or whatever, traveling, there used to be so many loyalty points and cards. How many of us have even used that? How many of us have even benefited from any of that? I mean, that's such a pain that when people say, give your number, give your card, we are like, yeah, rene do. Matlab, I don't even know how much I have and I've not used, a dime of it, right? So I think there is this one is there are some folks looking at instant gratification, right? I mean, give me something now. Don't make me wait like, after a year and I don't even know what it means. And then how do I kind of, create fungibility where I do n number of things. How can I kind of, encash it today? Is there a backend platform that stitches some of that, right? From a loyalty perspective, making it more gamified, simple, that you are able to give back or recognize your customers for whatever he's done, right? So I think, there is a large scope and area. I think we are dealing it in bits and pieces. We still don't seem to have nailed that holistically. I think it crisscrosses between this whole tokenization crypto on one side to government regulations to really kind of creating innovative way of how do you kind of give loyalty points, right, for that matter. So it is like there is this three large baskets to me, but I don't think we have kind of nailed it. Maybe good thing for AJ, for DLT Labs to go after, and Sol, and we are there to obviously evangelize you all if you get there.
Sure. So we have overshooted the time, and it was very interesting discussion. I think we could have gone on for a few more hours. Thanks to be part
That's
of
blockchain or DLT. Right? It can continue to go on.
That's blockchain. So it was great moderating, having this panel as a moderator. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for having
Thanks
me.
to all of you.
Thanks. It was nice to meet you. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you. Lovely
Bye.
to meet everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, Gary. Yeah.
So welcome everyone. So this is an power-packed 12-day hackathon, which we are going to do in one of our builders platform for developer, which has been developed by DLT Labs. It goes by name DL Unify. So we are expecting candidates to develop awesome, breathtaking blockchain applications which solves real-time issues, real-time applications. Currently, we have near about 308 registrations as team, which has just over exceeded our expectations around this particular hackathon. The amount of participation has been huge. I foresee that we have similar kind of enthusiasm during the time of hackathon, and people are building something which is going to add value, which is going to solve certain real life problems, certain real life use cases, and probably help in blockchain adoption around enterprise as well as public sector, or around issues around self-governance. We will be sending out details to all the participants who have registered for the hackathon by today EOD over an email, which will have all the details around how to participate and how to go ahead with this particular hackathon. And just one more thing to add, there are a lot of prizes to be won. The first prize is of 5 lakh INR, second prize is of 2.5, and third prize will be 1 lakh. So it's a huge bounty is there to be taken, and all the best to all the participants who have participated and who are going to be with us for next 12 days.
Thank you so much. So we had a wonderful day where we have got so many insights on blockchain in several domains. And truly, we have a lot of key takeaways from the day. But before we wrap up, it's my privilege to propose a word of thanks on this occasion. I, on behalf of DLT Labs and the entire team, wish to extend a very hearty note of thanks to Shri Jayesh Ranjan ji, Ms. Rama Devi Lanka ma'am, and to all the speakers, panelists, and participants for gracing us with their presence and sharing with us their perspective today on blockchain in several domains. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Dr. Kalpana Sastry, Mr. Kunal Bhasin for their explanation on blockchain in agriculture and healthcare respectively. And I'm also very grateful to all the panelists for their viewpoints on blockchain in fintech and supply chain, and also its use case in public sector. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our hearty thanks to our chair and CEO, Mr. Loudon Owen, our founder and Chief Technology Officer, Mr. Neeraj Srivatsava, our co-founders, Mr. Ajay Singh and Mr. Umesh Kushwaha, and the entire organizing team for their efforts in making Unblock 4.0 a huge success. Thanking all of you. Have a great evening.